Oh.
That's good. That's what you want to see. You want to see it go blinky, blinky, blink. Give us a minute. I know it's exciting. I'm going to repost that on YouTube because I'm lazy. Lazy. I want to type something twice. Okay, so we got already some viewers on and watching, so that's good.
Hello,
Make
everyone.
sure I can mute site. Mute site. Okay, is sound working? Okay. Some viewers. Sound check. So I kind of have to do this silly little dance, but it ends up actually being pretty interesting because it's just like we're just talking about what we're about to do, even though we're doing it already, which is very meta. I don't know. I'm hoping my sound is good. I had it a little too loud. Hey, okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so I can hit clip if I get loud, so that's good. That's what I want to see. I want to see me hit the compressor. Dun, 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 dun. So, all right, so we're going to start in a few seconds. Hope you guys are ready for this. Hope you guys are ready for Luke's brain.
It's definitely a wild one.
Yeah, it is a wild one. Well, you know what? I mean, all right, well, let's not do the show before you. It's so easy to talk to you. It's really hard doing a pre-show with you because I just want to chat, you know? Why are you so agreeable and fun? I mean,
because the mind is a weird thing, and if you can find someone that links with your mind, it's easy to make conversation.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna just assume that people have their crap together and they're happy with whatever they're seeing. And all right, we're gonna go live in 3, 2, 1.
Oh
Yay! Live in 3, 2, 1. Now you can see our faces.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Technocrat Live. I'm your host, Matthew Newhall, and this is my guest, Luke McAfee. Welcome back.
Thank you. How's
right.
everyone?
How you doing, everybody? All you internet people. So, in case you're wondering which camera, it's not the bright camera. The bright camera is just off. Eventually, I'm going to do a dual camera thing. It's a dim camera.
Not a worry.
They're not dim, but the light around it is dim. Yeah, I'm still playing around with the lighting. Let us know if we're too washed out or too much of one color or another color. Okay, awesome. So let me tell you what we're going to be talking about today. First, I want to remind you, please, if you enjoy this show, give us a like, give us a love if it's a platform that supports the love. Share it. This is on YouTube and Odyssey, so if you're on YouTube and you hate YouTube, go on Odyssey because I want to support Odyssey. If you're on Odyssey and you're like, I don't want to figure out another platform, go on YouTube. So there's no excuse. I know you guys can do this. I know you can find a platform that this is live on, or if you'd rather, you could time shift too. But if you're not time shifting, please, I'd really like it if you commented. That would make me happy because as much as I like the subs and I like the likes, the comments are what I really want because I want to interact with you guys. I want you guys to ask me questions. I want you guys to ask Luke questions. I want you to disparage me if I get something absolutely wrong, which I will sooner or later. It'll happen. So even though I have the Dystopia report is nicknamed the I Told You So report, that doesn't mean that everything I say is right. In fact, some things are dead wrong. So, don't be afraid to jump in there if I'm wrong. Quick reminder, we don't do politics on the show, and it's just as simple as we just don't name names of politicians or political parties. That's the easy way to just get away from that. And you can still talk about bills or the White House or Congress or whatever, but just don't name names, and it gets so much nicer, right? It seems like that. Those are the triggers. Like someone hears someone's name and they're like,
like, oh, why would you talk about them? Why?
Why would you talk about that person? Why would you help them? So we don't. You're right. So, okay. So without further ado, you know what? Before I get into this, how are you?
Crazy.
Good.
We've been having weird medical problems, but powering through. Just trying to enjoy summer as much as I can, even though I hate the heat.
Right. Weird to you or weird to your doctor?
I would say both.
Both.
Lost hearing on one side of my ear, so that was definitely an interesting thing. Same side of my body, I also got an injury on my foot that's still unexplained.
Wow. I'm so sorry. How's your professional life? Is it okay?
Haven't been able to work for the last 2 weeks. Can't really stand for prolonged periods, so I can't photograph, so that's been really kicking me in the face.
That sucks.
Pun intended.
So, why don't you give people a quick bio and let them know what you do? So you're a photographer.
So my name is Luke, photographer. Currently work retail at Apple. It's a lot of fun. Learn a lot of things. Do my own personal research on the weird things that keep me up at night. And one of the few topics today is probably one of my favorites. So I'm very excited to go into detail into that with some personal experience as well as some applied experience, I guess.
Right. And are you prepared to talk about that thing you were talking to me about ahead of time that you might want to plug, but you don't have a plug connection for it, or you're just going to
Well, very soon I'll be starting my own podcast. I don't have a personal name for it yet, just because we have to see if the domain is able to take.
Right. So if you send me a link or you know, something intelligible, I'll mention it on the show, and that way people can hear. They'll go, oh, okay, cool. I want to check out Luke's thing. So Luke's going to have a thing, people. He's going to have a podcast, so you're not going to want to miss it. I mean, I could have you, we could do a podcast and just be on here every week. It's like that.
That would be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's a ton going on in that brain. Like, to me, you're a legit artist in the sense that understanding the world around you, connecting with the world around you, and then expressing what you learned, like that combination. Like, and not necessarily like what you can have people teach themselves, like not in a scientific perspective, but what lessons you learned is what art is.
True.
You know, and that's you.
So
you are art. So, all right. So we have living art on the show, and you can't do better than that when you're talking about dystopia. So let's get into the dystopia report. By the way, if I seem a little scatterbrained, just give me a smack in the comments. My life has been bonkers as of late. Also, my life is crazy for different reasons. So I'm glad you guys are here and I'm here and we're able to connect and I'm able to share the stuff that I have in the Dystopia report. We're going to do this interview, but I am like a little off. So I'll do my best, and you know, just connect with me. You know, give me a kick, give me a flick. You know, you have my number. You got the comments in these on these platforms, so let us know. Okay, so the first topic is tech, and of course, I don't know if you heard about what's happening with Red Hat. So okay, so this is like the third week we're covering this, so that'll give you an idea how big this is. Red Hat announced a few weeks ago that they are no longer going to make it drop dead simple to grab the source from them. And they're no longer going to be producing CentOS, which is their free, kind of de-trademarked version of their mainstream RHEL or Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So they're pay for Linux. So it's like, what's going on there? Well, it looks like what they're doing is they're going to be dropping the source code for their code behind a EULA wall. So in other words, you have to agree to a license agreement in order to get to the other licensed material. And the other licensed material is partially GPL2. And so this drew the ire of Rocky Linux, which was one of the most popular CentOS workalikes. And the owner, head? I don't know. The guy in charge of Rocky Linux came out and said, what are you doing? You can't do that. We're just going to go and get the source code wherever we have to get it and put it up because we don't think what you're doing with the EULA and the GPL is legal. And to which that a lot of people breathe a sigh of relief, but a lot of other people are like, this is why we don't want to do corporate at all. So Red Hat, or more importantly IBM, which now owns Red Hat, is kind of damaging corporate or enterprise Linux a little bit here. So what's going on? Well, it seems like they were the big hero of Linux a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And so everyone's kind of going, what's going on here? Well, believe it or not, the story today is about Oracle or Oracle Linux, which was also a Red Hat Enterprise workalike, or a trademarked and rebuilt up from there. Linux, one of the advantages to doing it that way is if somebody writes something for Red Hat Linux, like a piece of software, and it'll just work on all of the pieces of on all the versions of Linux that are derived from Red Hat Linux. So that's the advantage. But Oracle has said, so that's why Oracle did it, right? They just want to do one functionality process for Oracle and for whatever, and whatever other products they have, and just set it up for that, and then okay, we're done. We don't have to do for all these different Linux distros. There is a solution to that called the Linux Standard Base. You can look that up. It doesn't cover everything though, but also people don't want to learn in their jobs. They just want to run the thing. Anyway, so it seems like it's not a big deal. It is a huge deal. Oracle is the good guy, and they have been the bad guy for a long time in this movie in a lot of ways. And I'm shocked. I mean, wow. Red Hat is the worst guy, I think, than Oracle here. Oracle, I have a quote from Oracle. Oracle has always made Oracle Linux binaries and source freely available to all. We do not have subscription agreements that interfere with a subscriber's right to redistribute Oracle Linux. On the other hand, IBM subscription agreements specify that you're in breach if you use those subscription services to exercise your GPL version 2 rights. Wow. And that is, as far as I can tell, 100% true. Oracle is not even embellishing there. So what's really going on here? So this is Red Hat Linux versus, it's created a versus battle that will definitely show up in court. EULAs, or end user license agreements. I don't know if you remember the Human Centipede episode of South Park, but that is EULAs versus the GPL2, which is used in Linux, which is used in pretty much everything nowadays, every kind of thing for sure, and a lot of instances of those things. So every kind of durable good, every kind of enterprise scenario, every kind of role that a computer can play, there's some of them at least are running Linux. Usually a majority of them, like Android phones have the vast majority of the phone market. Android runs Linux. Just to give you an idea, you're like, I don't use Linux. You do, actually. Your car probably uses it. Your TV probably uses it. Your firewall probably uses it. And this affects it because all that stuff is licensed under the GPL. And you've had to click through a EULA probably to get that software running because the EULA is really for their software. Now Red Hat's using it to apply to the GPL2 as well. Wow. So this is going to be a test of EULA versus GPL in court. And with companies like Oracle behind the GPL2 side, the GPL2 might win. It might say, okay, there are some software licenses you can't use a EULA with, which will immediately create a whole new ecosystem of not EULA incompatible software. EULA case law is really bad. In other words, every time the EULA is about to be challenged in court, some white knight comes in and saves it from really being tested. Right? That's why we have EULAs. It's not that EULAs are any good. It's not that clicking a button is considered a signature. It's that no one's ever tested it. But now we have giant companies with billion-dollar stakes testing this, finally. So this is like, it doesn't matter whether you're using Apple or Windows or your primary software is Adobe and that's what you're thinking about, or whatever it is that your EULA hell is, your own personal EULA hell, this affects you. So yeah, this is getting really big, and in a way, IBM and Red Hat are doing a huge favor for the Linux community because this idea that you can ignore the rights laid out in the GPL is about to be tested in court. I think I know which way it's going to go. All right, so anyway, at ZDNet if you want to read more on that. Speaking of Linux and its penetration. And by the way, we're PG-13, so we can get kind of dirty here. Linux desktop has hit 3% market share for the first time. So yeah, this was like a huge goal in the zeros for all the Linux geeks. They wanted to get the Linux desktop because they wanted to take on Microsoft. It didn't happen because companies that spend $1 billion on usability tend to get it, and Linux is, the geeks on functionality first, right? Everybody's picking their poison, and the Linux geeks are picking functionality over usability. The only way Linux is going to become usable is if Linux becomes really stable, even kind of boring, and there's not a lot of changes happening in it, which is also what you would expect to see happen before people start canceling their pay-for-subscription model because they don't need the support anymore, because it's extremely stable, which is kind of what's happening with Red Hat. These things are all connected. So, yeah, it's a market. It's an ecosystem. So, anyway, that's my take on it. Let me know what you think. If you think that they desktop Red Hat Linux, switching it up, and this business with, and if this is all part of the same ecosystem, if they're all, the GPL2 versus EULA, this is all the same thing, set of circumstances are happening. I think it is. All right, onward to tech government. By the way, you can jump in if you want. If you think, I realize you probably don't have a lot of strong opinions on Linux, Red Hat Linux. And
first time hearing it. So.
That's kind of my wheelhouse. So like, I'm like, I gotta talk. I mean, like,
oh, 100%.
I used to be a zealot. I used to be an open source zealot, and like, I was just like, you know, I'd be like, open source is the only way, and then people would be like,
is it though?
They'd be like, dude, I'm a painter. I don't care. You know. Like, hey man, I drive a truck, I don't care. I'd be like, you care! They'd be like, no, I don't. I'm like, all right.
It affects all your systems.
And eventually I listened to them and said, yeah, you're right, you don't care. So I get it. Yeah, it does. It does affect them. Mm-hmm. Well, you see, this is the first time I ran into the technocracy. I'm like, the people who understand this are making decisions for you, and you're not even aware it's happening.
Yeah, it could just be like your beautiful company, and you could be the head of the company, but have no idea what's actually building your company. Yes, right. You could be the head of that company, but what's going on behind the scenes is what actually matters. Right.
I mean, like imagine like it doesn't matter whether it's like you're a flower delivery company or Boston Robotics. Mm-hmm. This thing affects you.
Yeah, because all your POS systems, this, that, and the third, all play into the role of building your computer. And if your computer is just running a certain system, obviously Linux decides to run through a lot of it. Mm-hmm. If that's not going to be the case, then what are you going to have? Oh, yeah, the system's working, I think. And then when it goes down, how are you going to know what's down for, what's it not down for?
Right.
All that good stuff. So I just simply think that, yeah, certain people could say, why would I care about that? But then when their job's not working, this isn't working, they're going to be turning to IT and be like, what's going on?
And IT is going to be like, well, there was a bunch of legal and management decisions that needed to be made about resources.
But why would that affect us?
Ongoing costs versus one-time costs, and they don't. Well, this is something that's happening with cloud too. Cloud is really what cloud is from a financial perspective is shifting your one-time costs to ongoing costs, or at least some of it. And everyone likes that, but what they don't realize is the ongoing costs of the outsourced ongoing cost is higher than the in-house ongoing cost by a lot. You know, maybe not a lot at first, but it actually it works on a curve.
Well, I could use the same example. Like cloud is like Apple is like the iCloud that you get with the storage. It's like you get capped at 2 terabytes, and granted, yes, I take a lot of photos myself, and I just looked and I'm at 1.5 out of my 2 terabytes, so I'm like thinking to myself, yes, I know I should be deleting my photos, but at the same time, you never know. I might need to pull up that one photo and just be like, hey, remember this? But at the same time, as soon as I hit over that 2 terabytes, am I really going to be protected with my photos still? Am I going to have to find something else? And all this different...
Oh, they'll do it for you.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to pay.
They'll go up to 4 terabytes, but I have to pay $40 a month. And I'm like, just to save my photos, you know what? I'll just put it onto a hard drive.
Well, you know, this is a more interesting problem. This is even a broader problem at the core of this problem. Mm-hmm. So they actually, now, in fairness to people running the Apple Cloud, you know, the reason that nobody organizes their data, Like, I don't know any, like, companies will do this as a security measure because they want to know exactly what's where on their system, and they don't want to just put anything anywhere. But for the most part, people just buy a bigger hard drive, take the old hard drive, make it a tiny slice of the old hard drive, and then put all new stuff on the new hard drive. And then they're counting on a hard drive treadmill getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's where I currently was at a point where, like, for me, like, I got an 8 terabyte housed hard drive that I just keep at home, and then one 4 terabyte portable. So as soon as I fill up the 4 terabyte, drag and drop. And I fill up the 4 terabytes again, instead of using the capacity of using 8 terabytes right away and then using 4 terabytes. So
right. Yeah. So most people solve it through staging, but even there's a technological level of staging too, where the growing hard drive sizes is protecting people in the background. And when that stops, you know, hard drives will probably go down in price, but at the same time, you'll have like a little bit of a bump because people will start doing like RAID 5s and RAID enclosures and stuff. So like even if like let's say it stops at 20, I think the biggest you can get right now is 22 terabytes. Let's say it stops at 30 terabytes.
Jeez.
Right? So well, it's expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So but let's say it stops at 30 terabytes. Like it doesn't, you just can't get bigger drives after that. You know, there'll be another 2 or 3 years where people are running RAID 5s with 3 30 terabyte drives, and those 30 terabyte drives will come way down in price. But at that point, everyone's going to hit a wall at once.
Yep.
And then what the heck are you going to do? Now you have to organize 60 terabytes of data.
And sift through what do we need to keep, what isn't essential, this, that, and the third.
Right.
That's why like I always love the joke with like video games is like playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas back in like when it came out in the early 2000s, and then playing the remastered version. The original one was maybe I think 30 megabytes or something like that, not even a gig yet. Yet the newest one's like 60 gigs, so it's like, yes, I get graphical changes, all the different shaders and all that in the world, but it's the exact same game, but it's a bigger file. Why that is just because we're trying to cram more, trying to push more, but at the same time, all right, now I gotta delete this, delete that, delete this, but now it's just figuring out why I have to do all that when I could play the game originally for such a low volume.
Right. Well, you know, it's well, it's always been game quality has always been a selling point, and it's been an arms race. Like a lot of it is, not everything is. Sometimes it's a technology curve, right? It's an S curve, but sometimes it's just an arms race where the game companies are just trying to come out with a fancier looking game to entice people, not based on substance. The story could suck.
Yeah, well, that's where like I like the example that's going on right now with Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto 6. That game has been in the development for the last 10 years, and they just cruxed $1 billion invested into this game. So that's where it leads me into the question of like, how big is this game actually going to be?
Right.
Because not a Joe Schmo is going to have a terabyte capability on their system, let alone like for me on my computer. Yes, I'm running 12 terabytes, but that's just because I invested into a lot of hard drives. But someone that's just a casual gamer, they're not going to be like, oh, $400 just to play a $60 game.
Right. Well, because what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to buy external hard drives and hook them up to their PS5s.
So it's just like,
yeah, I don't know.
Where do we end? But at the same time, when we look into systems, systems used to just be all manual, and now it's if your system's down, everything's down.
Right.
So it's like, how can't we resort back to the old ways because our system doesn't allow it? But why? I
mean, that's like a theme with geeks in general. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of geeks out there who like, when they retire, they take up woodworking.
Yeah.
You know, they literally buy the farm. You know, because they're just like, I've had it with technology. By the way, would you like a drink?
I'm good right now.
Okay, cool. So if you decide this wine, it's up to you.
Perfect.
And it's sweaty because I have a refrigerator now. It's fancy. I'm living the fancy life here. So, by the way, if you guys have any, if anybody out there has gone out to greener pastures, let us know, because I want to hear that story. All right, so on to tech government. It looks like the FTC is pushing click to cancel. And what I mean by that specifically is, of course, the Federal Trade Commission. And the idea is that they are insisting that companies, streaming companies specifically, but maybe some other IT companies as well that do streaming but aren't like the traditional media companies that have switched over, like HBO or like something like that. Right. You know, like I don't mean to pick on any Disney, whatever. You know, so the FTC is pushing them to have one-click subscription cancellations. Apparently, they don't have that. You have to go through a bunch of hoops.
Yep.
Holy cow, they are pissed.
Yeah,
and by they, there's a lot of different groups here. I mean, I can't even believe that these guys were coming out. Basically, the argument is variations of the argument that people are too stupid to figure out that if they click on cancel, that it's going to cancel their subscription.
Yes.
What?
Well, on that concept is like with Netflix, what they did with the now like proving household. Where let's say we shared the same Netflix account for like the last year and a half. If I were to stream it outside of your home IP or the home core networks that were signed in originally, now you have to prove that this is your home address, let's say. But if you can't prove anything, you now have to pay an additional $7.99 if you want to continue using it outside of that house. So like for me, when I was traveling to Florida, I got that notice when I was on a plane saying, "Are you the home user for this account?" I'm like, no, me and my friends share, and then it booted me out. So I'm like, okay. Then I click it back, and it says asking me to sign in. I sign in saying prove identity, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, well, they did that on purpose. That's
Yeah.
not even a bug. That's a feature.
And then that's what I found out, that they added that as like a security measure where people are just abusing the fact that people are shared subscriptions. So if you can't pay for your own, how do I cancel? Like for me, I wait until December for Hulu just because of the $1 a month.
Actually, I covered this on the show, and the big problem is for people who travel.
Yeah.
People who what the hell are you supposed to do?
Yep, that happened to me. Like, I got kicked out of every single streaming app except for YouTube, just because of the simple fact me and my friends worked out the system. Right. You pay for this one, I pay for that one, you pay for that one. And
of course, the solution, a technological solution for the traveler, is to use your VPN. But the problem for that is, one of the reasons that Netflix doesn't suck is because wherever you are, you attach to a local cache of the movies. Yep. So if you're going through a VPN, now you're going to the VPN and it's going to its local cache. So you have a larger hop, which is going to lower the movie quality and possibly even like create interruptions.
Yep.
Just to get around there. Yeah. So anyway, so the FTC is
something else.
The FTC is pissed, and they're trying to get them to come around. Get this. These are all the organizations that are against it. So we have and I haven't even heard of a lot of these before. I'm going to just put my glasses on because I don't want to mess it up. The Internet and Television Association, or NCTA, the Association of National Advertisers, or the ANA, the Consumer Technology Association, CTA, and these are all like major tech companies and major media companies and major advertisers. The Consumer Technology the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, PDMI, the News Media Alliance, the NMA, have all come out against this. And it's like, it's like a who's list of what 0.01 percenters and their pet companies. And what? I don't even, like, how could you think you look like the good guys? These guys might be, so I don't know if you remember, I do the OWI Awards on here. So the Own Worst Enemy Awards. So these companies, for coming out so publicly against this, might be their own worst enemies. Yep. I don't know.
I feel like it would be, just because of the simple fact, like, if one of the companies in particular, like the ad revenue, is, granted, there's like streaming services like current ones we're on, YouTube, certain people really fester their videos to get like that 10-minute mark just so they could get the 2 ads and get paid double the amount, just for the simple fact people got through with it. But then if you're going to pay for a subscription, that's going to bypass the ads.
You know what's funny? I haven't even thought about any of that stuff.
Yeah. So for me, like, I've been lately on YouTube Premium because I'm on YouTube more than anything. And it's just baffling because I remember hearing all my friends complain that, like, oh, whenever I'm streaming on, let's say, Twitch, and someone doesn't watch the ad, just closes the app and reopens it, skips the ads and altogether, so they don't get a part of the ad revenue. And they saw their percentages drop.
Right.
Just because people don't want to wait and watch a 30-second ad to, as much as I've seen 10-minute ads or a whole 45-minute documentary for an ad.
You know what's funny is Laura's in marketing, of course, and Laura and I talked extensively on this on her show about ads and ads. My opinion is the right move is the one that just completely bypass. This is a good segue. Segue. Kudos, Isaac. Yes, we're still doing that 4 years later.
Well, because I'll use the same thing. Like, where have you ever seen a Netflix commercial? I've seen Paramount, I've seen HBO Max, I've never seen a Netflix commercial.
Right.
Yet, if they want to entice people to want to join their subscriptions, when you want to try to put it on major networks. Like, granted, I'm one never watch TV or listen to the radio much.
Right.
But at the same time, I know my parents, they watch live sports and just have a little plug in there just so you can get some ads where it's like, oh, maybe I'll subscribe to that.
Right.
Because, like, that's how, as a kid, you see bright colors. You're drawn to it. Netflix, they have that crazy elaborate opening. And that, to me, if I was a kid, I'd be like, immediately like, what's that?
Right. Bum bum.
Yeah, but now it's just like, I get where certain directions are going, but to have the whole entire thing where you're going to be fighting a one-click cancellation.
Right.
Make it easy on the user where, granted, they don't want to use this, they're going to go somewhere else. And if they don't go somewhere else, well, make them want to come back.
Right.
And that's where I've seen, like, Cablevision companies like, Optimum in particular. My mom was sworn up and down that she'll get HBO Max for free. Found out that she's been paying for it the last 3 years. So it's just like,
wow.
what's really to say that these are reals or this is just something to make people?
I don't want to advertise for this app. I don't know if it works. In fact, it may be more evil than the companies it's claiming to save you from. There's a thing called Rocket. And its whole scheme is that, hey, you don't know you're paying for the subscription.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
where
yeah.
It breaks down like, oh, here's what you're actually paying and what actually wasn't paid for.
It's like a credit card bill analysis tool almost, but with the ability to one-click cancel stuff. So if they're able to sell that app, that tells you there's a problem, right? They're adding a certain. Who knows? They might be in this group of people.
Exactly. Maybe it's them that making it. Just
Yeah, they
so
may have been pushing it. Right?
And then they wanted to build that argument, and now that app's completely off the face of the earth.
Right. They get obliterated. Well, this is what's happening with the IRS. The IRS, the White House came out and said, we want to make an app that we want to change the IRS rules so that normal people can just log into a website, fill in a few boxes, and boom, they're paid their taxes. All the accounting software companies went no.
Because it was like the same thing like with TurboTax, like when you do like when you do a self thing, you could fly through that in a matter of seconds. And granted, like my mom is an accountant, so she knows how to do this by paper, online. And when I had to fill out my own taxes this year, she's like, just do it online. It's going to take you 2 minutes. I'm like, there's no way. And she literally started a stopwatch on her phone. It took me maybe 45 seconds, all because I had to just, oh, that's right. Click here. All right, refund.
All right. Well, first of all, awesome on a refund, but
just to have that ease of where, like, yes, I'm happy that my mom can do this manually, but at the same time, now that's eliminating her work where that's just like, all right, I could just easily do that.
Right. Well, so there's still I haven't been secretive about this. I'm in the middle of a divorce right now, and well, it's more like the end of a divorce. But it's complicated.
Yes. Right.
So that's a situation where you still need an accountant. But this, for most of the years that I paid taxes, it was really boring. It was just salary, withholding.
This, that,
here's the exemptions. Here's the target. Here's what you actually paid. Here's what you actually owe. Here's the difference. You owe us money, or we owe you money. Usually, they owe me money. But which is good, right? Well, you don't want it to be too much, right? Because then you're giving them free money. But at the same time, it's better to round on your side. That way, they have to pay you. But it was so easy. Why wouldn't that be 2 minutes and 5 click?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like what really is stopping the whole entire argument. Well, what's making the argument of why we can't just have one-click cancellations? Like, make it easy on the people.
Right.
If you want to have peace, I guess.
Right.
Make it easy on the user. It's great having
Well, one of these companies, I forget which one. It might have been PDMI. Maybe it was CTA. I'm not sure what it was too. Was making the argument that that automatic renewals is their bread and butter.
Yeah.
But what is it? What are they really saying? They're saying you're too stupid to know how to click on a button to cancel yourself, and automatic renewals are our bread and butter. So our bread and butter is you being stupid. That's what they're actually saying. What? How is that an argument?
The biggest thing as well is companies will not come out of their woodworks just to let you know, hey, your subscription's ending this month. Do you want to continue? Yeah, the whole renewal thing, as you mentioned, is just one of the most irritating things because for me, for the longest time, I had no idea that I was still subscribed to one app that I've not used in maybe 2 years.
So one of the things I've been thinking about doing is creating dedicated credit card accounts for my streaming, and then just periodically canceling them and creating new ones. And that way, you're not surprised. If they only have data from an account, but circumstances kind of put me in that situation. But I'm like, this kind of works because it doesn't matter. They'll if you don't actually cancel, they'll keep billing you, but they'll bug you to change your credit card information. So they'll bug you, reminding you you're subscribed.
And just be like, oh,
there's no question, right? I forgot to cancel. Thanks. Oh no, they're still bugging me. Forgot to cancel. Thanks. Oh, they're still bugging. Oh no, they're not bugging me anymore. I actually canceled. Now I can pay them. Right?
Smart idea.
Yeah. So I mean, but why should I have to do that? It's like
why are there so many hoops that I have to jump through just to screw a system?
One of the reasons stuff like this would happen with the mail, with snail mail, But this wouldn't happen that much because there's rules about fraud that are specific to the U.S. mail. And that's one of the reasons I still mail paper checks and get paper bills. Well, you know, as a neo-Luddite, you know.
For me, that's another whole thing about like fraud, and as well as IRS and all that good stuff, where it's just the emergency relief funds.
What?
During the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's a whole other thing. I don't know if you want to get into that. It's
yeah,
just like,
you can go wherever you want.
For me, it's just like the whole thing with that is just like there's billions upon billions of dollars that were given out. And granted, yes, certain people actually got the money, but certain people claimed that for people that weren't even alive or not even real. And then it just asks the age-old question. It's just like, so is this their way of getting back at us by saying, yeah, we can't tax the people all this money, or we can't ask for this money back, so how do we figure out ways around it?
Right.
All right, let's make a subscription service that everyone already knows, but now you've got to confirm that this is your household. And if this isn't your household, now you have to pay more to be a part of it.
Right.
So,
well, this is the old argument about insurance fraud. Everyone's like, I don't care about insurance fraud. Those insurance companies have it coming. Well, unless you have an insurance policy and then your rates go up.
Yep.
Because they're just going to charge everyone else for the difference. Because they have to. They have to.
They have to
meet, or they're not doing their business.
They have to figure out a way to get the money back, but with the most conventional, unconventional ways.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So that's where, like, I was talking with a friend the other day about that, because we were really just baffled, because granted, we did our taxes this year and we did get our money back from the government, but at the same time, we know plenty of our friends that claimed a lot of unemployment that they really shouldn't have, but they still got paid by the government for it. So it's like, how are you getting that amount of money, but I only got this? Am I going to have to pay more in taxes for this? Nope, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to pay.
But at the same time, over time, you're going to start seeing that gradual decline.
Yeah, there's no free ride.
Yeah, and that's where my friend had that rude awakening, because I'm not going to, like, X amount of money he got, but definitely got a pretty penny from it. And then when he did his taxes this year, he saw that he owed almost close to what he got back.
So this is the usual problem with, this is actually a problem with computer programs too, exiting. You know, and this is a problem with corporate welfare or a computer program or any set of rules where you're doing something automatically. You need exit conditions. You need exit conditions that are for every circumstance. And what happens is people will write exit conditions just for some circumstances, and then some code or people don't exit, and they just keep looping and looping, and that's why they call it a loophole, right? You know,
the gambling syndrome.
Yeah.
Where if you can make all that money and know, all right, it's time to leave, instead of being like, nah, maybe I'll risk it all.
Right. Well, but like, the thing is, if you distance yourself sufficiently, you may not even get caught. They may just close the loophole. I mean, you may not get caught, but when I say get caught, it could be one of two things, right? One is you get caught because it was illegal and you shouldn't have been doing it. But the thing is, it's usually legal. So you haven't technically done anything illegal, even though it's clearly immoral, not how the system was supposed to work. You've gamed the system.
Yep.
Gaming the system is usually not illegal.
Yep.
With the exception of maybe insider trading specifically. They can usually kind of get you on that if you're...
Usually.
Yeah. But but it isn't like... The legal logic isn't the same. It's just you were in a position to take advantage.
It's so bizarre that is like that.
Yeah, right? It isn't...
When you logically think about it, it's just like...
Yeah, with insider trading, there isn't necessarily a poison tree like there is in other criminal situations.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so that was pretty good. Good, interesting take on that. GM. Wait till you hear this. This is nuts. This is tech government. GM has a request that's going to be decided next week by the NHTSA. So just to put things in perspective, before I actually tell you what this story is, you probably haven't heard this. So last week I covered the NHTSA, or 2 weeks ago, the NHTSA confirmed what I've been saying about telematic systems and CAN buses in cars all along. And what DARPA said like 8 years ago or 6 years ago or something. Like, they are hackable, and not only that, they are mass hackable, and we're vulnerable to a terrorist event. Now, what they said it in response to was Massachusetts actually saying, we're going to enforce our right to repair law, which means you have to make the ability to replace parts in CAN buses, which are primarily software, available to manufacturing companies, and let the users, but more importantly, let ordinary people go in there and hack their CAN bus and hack the components in their car and make things on the CAN bus work with new components. And
well, I know something very.
They said the security on this stuff is so bad, if we just force all the companies at once to reveal it, we're gonna have a terrorist attack. That's literally what they said, right? So that's their feeling about automated systems in cars. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
that's the premise.
Yeah,
I haven't
no,
told the
like
story yet.
the thing with that is, as well as, like, I know Teslas in particular. I've seen custom Teslas up the wazoo, because it is granted, like, the big console right there is a gigantic iPad, as I always call it. But if you know anything about simplistic hacking, you can change that whole car from the horn to this showing that, all with just simple knowledge of basic hacking. And I have a friend that has a really amazing Tesla that his horn just screams out slurs every single time he honks. And I'm just
Get
like,
the fuck out of the way!
imagine, like, just like,
I've seen cops do that too.
yeah. And I'm just
NYPD usually.
so I'm just like looking at it like, what else can you do? Oh, I can play Pac-Man while I'm driving. I'm like, how? Well, my steering wheel, I can just do this and control Pac-Man. I'm like, there's no way. Parks his car and loads it up, and I'm just watching him play Pac-Man with his steering wheel. I'm like, this is a Tesla, right? How do you do it?
So here's the crazy thing. I know about that, and here's the crazy thing. When you're playing a video game on a Tesla, if you're using the steering wheel as a control, it still attaches. It's the wire connection to the front wheels. At least this was true a year or two ago. It's still connected. So you're dry steering the front wheels while you're playing your video game.
Yeah, like you could play Forza, but with an actual
so if
car.
you see a Tesla parked on the side of the road, and his front wheels are doing this, they're playing a video game.
But it's just like, how this can be, and that's just like so weird that you could actually do that in your car.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's Linux underneath.
Yeah.
So there was an interesting problem. This is, again, something I covered in the show. When was this? 2 years ago now? Maybe 2.5 years ago? Teslas were getting bricked.
Yep, it's very easy to.
In their garages, but it wasn't like nobody was doing it. They were getting bricked
just
on their
from
own.
the computer system.
It was the computer itself. You know what it was? So for Linux geeks, you'll know this, or any computer geek that like does kind of like a system administration level, does system administration as the final user in a critical system. Log files.
Yes.
You have to rotate them out. They hadn't rotated them out. The log files were filling up and filling the hard drive, and Linux would start randomly killing processes because that's memory. No, because it's
It was like doing like the kill switch on.
So it would the file system would fill up and the kernel would panic, and then on that computer, and then the car wouldn't run. It bricked the car. They had to bring the car to the dealer, and they had to reinstall that component. I think they had to replace it. I don't think they had a way to get into it.
There was a
because they didn't understand Linux.
Yep.
It's crazy. So yeah.
I know there was like a troubleshoot that you could do, like if you start the car and then there's a back latch that you would hook onto.
Okay.
And you start the car and click that latch at the same time, it would brick the whole car.
Really?
Just because the whole system wouldn't know what to do.
Oh.
And for example, like
it would get into sometimes I call that a race condition.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's a well, all right. It's it's a catch. All right. It depends. It might have been a race condition. It might not have. So a race condition is specifically where you've got two processes that are waiting for the other one to finish, and they never send the signal, and then it just spikes the CPU and nothing happens.
Yeah, because what happened is I have a friend that his dad got a Tesla as a gift from the job he was working at. The whole family has Teslas. It's a really bougie family. But he told me that I could have fun in his Tesla. And I'm like, is there a way I could just try something that I saw on a Mythbusters? So I tried it, bricked the whole entire Tesla in the parking lot.
Wow.
And he looks at me, he's like, what am I going to tell my dad? I'm like, I don't know. Takes it to Tesla, and they literally saw that the whole entire computer got fried. I'm like, why? And they couldn't explain why.
Of course they could, because they've never looked at the software either.
Yeah.
Right. So the way that they, as much as Tesla's innovating with like their mechanisms for selling and distributing cars, they're very much the same as everybody else in the sense that they just replace parts.
Yep.
They don't look at the software in each unit. They just pull the unit out, put a new one in, plug it in, run an initialization sequence, and it runs.
So exactly what
they have no idea what's going in that box. This is a bunch of black boxes talking to each other.
Exactly what my friend had happen. They took it into the shop, gave him a whole new front and everything, and it's just like not a new car, and they're like, oh no, it's a new computer. I'm like, That easy?
Well, yeah.
So let me try this again. And they're like, I don't know what you did, but don't do it again. I'm like, okay.
Well, this is kind of what. So there's a bunch of different angles to this. One is, of course, like user rights, like owner rights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a car, like so many other things that this is a problem with, is a durable good. The idea is you're supposed to buy it. It's supposed to last for decades. But if nobody can repair it, how is that going to work?
Yep.
Right? And that's what Massachusetts' right to repair law is about, and that's what the NHTSA is basically saying. Well, we can't fix that right now because it's too big of a security. See, their policy here is known in the computer industry as security through obscurity, which works until it catastrophically doesn't. Security through obscurity works if your attackers are not knowledgeable. But if you have an advanced persistent threat, which if the real risk here is a terrorist attack, terrorists are definitely an advanced persistent threat.
Yes.
They're just looking for ways to get into things. So sooner or later, if they find it, boom, they're going to be there. The reason you don't see this, you don't see people hacking each other's cars, is because you could be looking at a murder charge if you get caught. But if you're like a terrorist organization, you've already dedicated your life to killing civilians, to get attract attention to a particular, to scare civilians,
Mm-hmm.
to get attention to a particular cause. You don't care if you go to jail for murder. So the thing is, like, there's no social ecosystem to work the bugs out with this system because the penalty's so high.
Yep.
And the impact's so high. But like, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means that nobody wants to go to jail for a prank.
Yeah, morality versus practicality, I guess.
Right. Well, it's just the impact is enormous.
Yeah.
The risk is also high, but the impact is enormous, so nobody's realizing the risk. Doesn't mean that the risk isn't high. It's like a weird converse situation because again, nobody wants to go to jail for manslaughter or something, and if they don't have to.
Yeah.
Because if you stop enough cars, people will die.
Correct.
Right. I mean, even if you stop them gently.
Yeah.
Enough, sooner or later, there'll be somebody who's on the way to the
force.
hospital,
Yeah.
or somebody needs to go home and get their medicine, now they can't, or something. Someone will die, and you will go to jail. So, yeah. But anyway, so here's the actual story. Dun, dun, dun. So, 2,500 GM has asked for 2,500 cars. They have a request in. That's what they're going to decide next week. To have human drivability requirements removed. So in other words, move these cars to an AI level 3 or level 4 car where the car can drive and you don't touch it. I think it's actually level 4 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the only cars on the road are level 2 or lower.
Really?
Yes. So, so you're sitting, the way it is legally, at least in the United States, there's some, UK is a little different, I think. But in the United States right now, the way it is legally, and this comes from cruise control laws. Mm-hmm. If you're in a car that has an AI driving it, you're still responsible, legally speaking.
Yep.
Not morally or practically, but
you still have to control. There's something in the way.
And there's only local city that have allowed level 3 cars, which can drive themselves, but still have all the controls for a human to drive them, to be driven. But here's the crazy thing. This is crazy. I mean, they're not gonna have windshield wipers.
No, that makes sense.
Right? Because they don't need them. They're not gonna have mirrors. What? A human can't drive this car.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it has a steering wheel and a brake and a gas pedal, for an emergency, there'll be plenty of conditions under which you can't drive it at all. I mean, you're squeegeeing the front window in your electric self-driving car because when the AI malfunctions. So this is the real deal. And we're not ready.
No.
We're absolutely not ready. I mean, and the reason I'm saying we're not ready is not because of my hypothetical, although there are non-hypothetical situations where AI cars have effectively gone into a race condition
mm-hmm.
in the street and blocked traffic, including emergency vehicles. That's documented in San Francisco. This has happened repeatedly. They just freak out. They're like, I don't know what to do, and they just stop. And the cop's like, get out of the way! They're yelling like there's a person in there. They look at it, oh fuck, it's one of those cars. There's nobody in there.
What do we do
and
now?
that's it.
Yeah.
You gotta get the thing towed, essentially. I mean, you can't even really get it towed, because at least a tow truck driver, if somebody tries to drive their car away from a tow truck, they're liable, right? Like when the tow hooks them up, if the tow's legal, it's now on them to not damage your car or the tow truck. But like if it's an AI, who's to blame? There's not even a person in the car. Maybe there's a passenger, or maybe he's on the way to get a passenger. There's no one. Who's in charge? Yeah, it's crazy. So we're not ready for this because of what the same organization said about terrorist attacks. If these cars, at least right now, if someone tries to remote control your car, you have some physical feedback, even if it's a drive-by-wire system, with the brakes or the steering wheel, usually. Not every car, not every situation, but usually. But if there's no one there and someone remote controls the car, it's a 2-ton bomb.
Yeah.
You can just do whatever. You can just mow people down all day long until the car malfunctions or somebody physically stops it.
And then you'll get pegged as, oh, you were the one driving.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. Well, right now, at least, you have a person in the driver's seat so they can try to fight it. I mean, the brakes are still hydraulic, even if it's drive-by-wire. So theoretically, if the logic in the car is right, and you hit the brakes, even if it's being hacked, the brakes may still kind of work. You know, the emergency brake might still work. Mm-hmm. You might be able to shut it off. You might be able to take the key and throw it out the window, and now the synchronization between the fob and the car are not, and then the car will stop. Use things that people could do.
Yeah.
But once you get to this level,
what are you going to do then?
There's nothing.
Tuck and roll.
Tuck and roll. That's it. Tuck and roll, and then hopefully, I hope you and your baby and your dog can tuck and roll. You know, one under each arm, I guess. You know, 60 miles an hour on the parkway, and that's if it hasn't hit the accelerator yet.
Yep.
Yeah. What the? All right, we're not ready. We're not ready for
No.
this.
I'd love to see this court case. Just to see how they're actually going to plead this and be like, why this would be so beneficial.
Well, the argument is that self-driving cars create less fatalities. Sure. But
caliber, yeah.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of traffic fatalities. A lot of people die in car accidents. A lot of people get hurt.
Well,
in car
that's
accidents.
the crazy thing about electric cars in particular, and that's why I've always wished that Tesla would make a motorcycle, but they won't, just because it's quiet, and you have a motorcycle that's zooming with no engine noise.
Right.
Oh, let me merge over here.
Save lives.
There goes Jimmy.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny part. There's the solution for that. I do it on my bike, which is loud radio, heavy metal.
Yeah.
Right?
Something so you can be known.
My pipes are pretty quiet, you know, and the thing is I can shut it off. So like if I see a cop, I'll shut it off. I'll turn it back on. But like you see me coming down the road, you're you know, like you hear that and you're like, oh, there's something's coming. I don't know what it is. They don't know it's a bike.
But they'll be aware that there's something in the area.
Yeah, and I mean also, you know, but I get that. You know, I get and like a lot of people get annoyed by so it's interesting. So I have here, I don't know. Maybe this is like boring, but I think it's interesting. I think the right way, if you've got a combustion engine on your motorcycle, to have the noise to protect you, but not to be annoying to people, is have pipes that can be loud at high RPMs, but are quiet at low RPMs.
Yeah.
Because especially if you have like a powerful engine, you don't need to go the high RPMs. You don't need to push it. So when you're idling, it's just very quiet. It just sounds like a Mustang or something.
Yeah.
But somebody tries to cut in your lane, and then hey, you're killing a motorcyclist. You know. Yeah. I mean, that's why they wouldn't hear the music. You know. But yeah, so there are solutions. I bet they don't. I would actually argue with that. I would bet they don't want the liability.
Probably.
They're probably afraid of somebody getting killed on a motorcycle and how it's going to look.
Yeah. I just think that would be personally.
But there are electric bikes.
I would personally invest into a Tesla motorcycle just to see how that would actually play out.
Right.
Just because I would love to see it be a Tron bike.
So you don't actually this is going to kind of blow you away. You don't actually need to. I'm going to look this up. I have a bookmark here. I forgot the name of the company. Show bookmarks. I'm having trouble figuring that out. Bookmark management. Weird. I thought it was on this. I guess it's not. There's a company that's made. All right. Well, I'll just skip it for now. But there's a company that's made a software that can be run on a cell phone and a wiring harness. So it's open source software, but they just sell wireless harnesses, and they design it to work on a particular cell phone that connects to your CAN bus, uses the insecurity in your car's CAN bus, and has AI running on the phone that will drive your car.
Weird.
There's open source self-driving car software that's free. Wait, you might be like, oh, that's eccentric. I wonder what it runs on. Does that just run on a couple of Teslas and a Bolt? No, it runs on 250 cars, including traditional cars. Basically, all you need to do is have some automated nannies, some of which are mandatory now.
Okay.
So braking and lane depart, and the ability to steer the car. If it has that, you can hook it up to your car. 250 different models. So what I've seen it in action. It's pretty amazing. So I wish I had the bookmark. I had it. It's weird. I had it last time. I don't know what I did with it. Maybe it's in here. There's so many browsers. No, it's not here either. Is this? Nope, not there either. I'm trying to not waste too much time. Anyway, but yeah. So this is the cat's out of the bag with this, and of course, the key is it has to be drive-by-wire. So it used to be cars would have like physical systems, like you had like a safe mode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like how like Windows has a safe mode or satellites have a safe mode. You know, your brakes are hydraulic. Yes, the car has a module that taps into the hydraulic system that can pressurize that and then run the brakes.
Gotcha.
You know, and just like the ABS is one of those modules,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, that's ever since ABS has been around, there's always been either a mechanical or electric part that controls the brake system through that. But like, you also had a physical hydraulic, like you pushing the pedal is depressing a fluid, which is making the brakes work,
Yep.
right? There's a physical system. A car can be off, it'll still kind of work, right? The steering is literally a column. It's like the steering column, and there's a rack, and it's like it's running on the pins, right? Or there's a gear, and that's what's turning the wheels. It's literally physical gears. Now it's not. It's just motors. You know,
Yeah.
motor, wires, motor.
That's all you need.
Yeah. So that's all you need, and if you have the software, it can work that way. Anyway, so it's crazy that this is like, this may be legit. And it's funny, people are like, I don't care about this stuff. I don't care about the technocracy. You'll care when a car's running you over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a car becomes what's the word? Sentient.
So it doesn't even need to be sentient. It just needs to be poorly secured.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and all right. So that's a good point, though, right? We can't even secure it against putsy humans. When we have an AI that's as smart as us and can work 1,000,000 times faster, because its logic it's just logic. There's no emotions involved, and there's no, I mean, it can just spin off a version of itself and say, well, that fork of me did it. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I just spawned a program there. It did it.
I just told it to take the quickest way. I didn't mean for it to go through 5 red lights.
I had no idea it was going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't even really have to know that it's going to do that, right? Our conscience go, hey, wait a minute. If we give our 4-year-old autonomy over our Ferrari, they might crash it.
Yeah.
Right? But an AI can just, I don't know.
Yeah, like take the little one to the soccer practice. Okay.
Right.
It's just the kid in the car with the car driving itself.
Have I given you guys nightmares yet? Let me know. All right. Anyway, so
it's Transformers before Transformers.
yeah. Oh yeah, we're so there. We're so there.
I'm just waiting for the car to shift.
So we have a science section too in the Dystopia report. We're still in Dystopia. We're in an hour. You're doing good. This is good. We're really like. Sometimes we never get out of Dystopia report. So that's like these are just conversation sparkers. We have some awesome conversation lined up. So I'm kind of like I want to push forward because I don't want to miss out on our conversations. All right. So on to science. So this is from the University of Alberta. One of my requirements for the science section is we actually have a group of people who are owning this idea. So science is see last week with Laura. When I was talking, I had a rant on what science is, if you want to know what science is. But the really quick version for me is, if you can't run an experiment and you can't make predictions with time, it's not really politically actionably science. Nobody should be making policy on it. Nobody should be making laws on it. Yes, you can have raw science that doesn't have any solid conclusions, just really good data and a direction, but nobody should be making any social changes based on that. For social changes, you gotta have predictions, or you gotta have the ability for other people to run the experiments without academic social walls put in place. In other words, accreditation shouldn't be used as a bat to hit people with. right? Oh, you don't have a PhD. I don't have to listen to you. Well, I just did it and it worked, and I followed all the rules. What's the problem? All right. Anyway, so University of Alberta. This is news to me. This isn't totally new. I think it's about 6 months old, but it seems to hit the news cycle again. I got a lot of people missed it the first time. This happens sometimes. We got a lot of cool page 50 stories on here. A 33,500 pound meteorite called El Al has been studied by some scientists, and they have found two, not one, but two brand new minerals in it. So if you're looking for a MacGuffin and you're writing some sort of story, if you don't know what a MacGuffin is, that's an unobtainable thing that everybody's fighting over. If you're looking for a MacGuffin for your comic book, you've got two new minerals to work with that were unknown to mankind until now. So the minerals in this case are allalite and stenotite. And this is actually from the name of the actual meteor, and from also from a person. I don't remember the entire story here. This is actually an older story for this week. So this is on CNN as of last year, but Greek reporter picked it up this week, this month. So like a few months ago, CNN covered it, but no one noticed it, and then people started to notice this. So we have two new minerals. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. It's not every day you get new minerals. You know, of course, it's molecules, not atoms. It's like new elements in the periodic table. One of the things they screwed up in the old days in the 50s with the comics, but yeah, still, holy cow. I mean, they weren't creating new. They were discovering new elements all the time back then. So I kind of get why they did that, but it was, of course, it was going to be some kind of molecule, not an atom.
I'll bring up something funny later about that when we get into our fun conversation.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I know
we can talk about whatever.
I know we're going to be getting into AI soon, but one of the few things that
one
of my friends challenged the whole entire plague was adamantium being the metal that's inside of Wolverine.
Oh yeah. It's used for a few other things.
Yeah.
Like the magnetic.
Yeah, Magneto's helmet. Yep.
Yeah.
So he simply put in ChatGPT, where can I find adamantium in this world? And it started giving him coordinates.
Okay, cool. So
And
I'm going to speak a little louder just so to make sure that people can hear me. So that is what we were talking before. Remember I said hallucination, and we kind of made a joke about that? That is known as, by the computer scientists, as a hallucination.
Okay.
So that is when AI hallucinates, that's exactly what happened. It basically made up some bullshit and presented it as fact.
That's where my friend right now is on that tyrant where he wants to save the money and go to those coordinates.
Really?
And that's where
you think maybe it's not a hallucination?
Yeah.
You think maybe it has some knowledge?
So that's where he really was like shocked to the core, because he thought it was just taking a reference from X-Men Origins.
Right.
Because they go to that village and then they find the adamantium there, and the coordinates gave him 38 miles away from where that said location was in the comics.
Okay.
So he's convinced that AI is either pulling his leg or taking him somewhere where he might be able to discover actual adamantium.
Wow. So I mean, it's almost like it's selling him a bridge.
Yeah.
You know.
So,
but that's interesting because, like, okay, so it could go one of two ways. It could be a hallucination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just completely made up. You know, it's a big fish story from Grandpa, right? Or it's possible that just fix that. I think it's all right. It is possible that, I don't know, adamantium's real. I mean, I would love to see what it's not an element. We know that's not how that works.
Let's hope.
Well, I don't think it's that. But there could be a molecule, right? I mean, we have alloys, right? It could be a new alloy or something that we haven't, something that would effectively have the properties of adamantium. It is possible. I mean, nobody would have predicted in the 20s that we'd be using depleted uranium for tank armor. So, and there was a lot of, I just covered this last week, there was a lot of strange stuff in World War II where just creating new alloys, combinations of metals, made much stronger metals, and it's one of the reasons the Allies won the war.
Yep.
So, I mean, the other hand, it begs the question, and I guess this is like one of the things that humans still have right, that AI doesn't, right? Obviously, but maybe it's an artificial restriction, maybe it isn't, but the idea that, how was I going to put this? that you have. It could be a hallucination, or it could be hidden information that's not available on search engines because search engines have redacted it.
Yeah.
And it's an easy example if you're like, oh, the tech companies would never do that. Why would they redact information like that? The easy example is Google Earth blocking out military bases.
Yeah.
Right? Or Google Earth blocking out key security, compromising security things.
The thing with even in Washington, if you go to the Washington Library and you try to read certain files, they're all redacted, and here's a little piece here, a little piece here. But what's stopping me from typing that same document and seeing if I can find the full thing?
Right. Yeah. If you have the search strings,
because there is the digital footprint.
Right.
So if it's typed on something, yes, you can hit backspace, but it was typed at one point. So what's stopping it from knowing, oh, from this point, this was actually typed out to this, but then it was actually switched to this?
So there's another piece here, too, which is that this is one of the things that linguistic AI, so we're really, all right, let me just lay this out, because somebody who's like a computer scientist may be bothered to shit by the fact that I keep saying AI. So what I'm really talking about here is machine learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for a quick primer, the thing that people have been calling AI is not really generalized intelligence yet. What it is it's a series of nodes of linguistic likelihoods. The nodes are actually likelihoods. Like, okay, if I say this word is the next most likely word to follow, and looks at those predictability patterns in human speech.
Well,
so they're based on what other people say. So, and but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with truth. But the thing that's really freaky about it is, as the algorithms get better at creating those prediction, nets, they call them nets.
Mm-hmm.
As they get better at creating those prediction nets, they sound more and more human-like. So it begs the question: is this just what we're doing? We just stringing words that are likely to follow each other along.
That's where I will use the fun example. Right now, I'm on iOS 17's beta. And that's one of the key things that they have, where after a while, if you've been talking with people in general or just typing, it will start learning your actual patterns of speech.
Right.
For me, I use a lot of shorthands for certain things, and it will know exactly when to put that in. If I'm just typing, I'll say hello, and then it will be like, how are you today, automatically, and I just have to hit spacebar and it will type that out for me.
Right.
Rather than me being, hello, how are you today?
Mm-hmm.
Or my favorite thing is I could literally just now type hi and then hit the spacebar until it forms exactly what I'm about to say to this person. But it knows how to differentiate between this person, that person. So I'm like, how it knows how to generate that is very strange, because I have a friend, Alex, her name is Alix, not Alex or anything like that. So it's a very weird spelling of it, but it knows exactly how to do that anytime I talk to her. So I'm like,
so there's a few different things going on in generally speaking, when I'm talking about AI, I'm really talking about the real. You may not. He may be talking about, you've had a lot of experience with different AI systems, visual AI systems, audio AI systems, still and motion picture
audio
stuff.
is probably one of my favorites right now.
Awesome. So, but I'm mainly talking about, and this applies to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
This approach can apply to all of them, but the one that's really taken the news and put AI back into common usage and just freaking everybody out, and the one that's going to decimate the economy is linguistic AI, or linguistic machine learning. And with the linguistic machine learning, it has, and ChatGPT-4, which is the one that most people are familiar with, has this differentiation. ChatGPT-4 has the knowledge of the internet available to it, so it can go and look at an old version of the internet and search for things as they were. But it also has a neural net, right? So it has a neural net that was made by running a supercomputer and just creating a likelihood map, which is not very big. It's only a few gigs, of which word combinations, what the next most likely word is. And so what it does is, depending on how hot you want to make it, which is actually just randomization, it'll randomize what the likelihood of the next word being accurate. Because apparently if there's no randomization, it sounds pretty dry. It sounds very,
monotone, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like
Like a robot would,
manufactured,
yeah.
like a robot would, right?
Yep.
So, but when you add that little bit of randomness, it makes a huge difference if the net is good enough and if the algorithm is good enough. But one of the things that ChatGPT doesn't have is it can't remember from session to session what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that might be happening there is it might actually be remembering,
Like how I.
creating a contacts list for you
Mm-hmm.
in its memory and saying, okay, these are the people that Luke's most likely to say these things to.
Well, if like
Like little mini neural nets on
Yeah.
each person.
like as you want to add the flair to your wording because you want to make something sound yours, unique, and all that. One of my favorite things I've done is like taking stories, but I ask it write it if the main character is schizophrenic instead.
Okay.
So for me, I asked it to write Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets if Harry was schizophrenic, and it gave me a whole different story, but it's the same core value of the story, but him suffering from this mental illness. So it's just like weird that it knows how to like because it's taking from all the different sources of what schizophrenia is, but
Right.
it also knows the story.
I bet it was pretty good too, because
Yeah.
of course there's a lot of rolling literature
Mhm.
on Harry Potter. There's tons of fan fiction.
Exactly. So
So
taking
that,
from
that
that,
created a
taking from that.
really great neural net, and
Yeah.
then you're able to just and there's a great neural net on mental illness, specifically schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And it just combines the two, and boom.
So
off
it's
to the
just like
races.
weird that it can do that with like a snap of a finger, but
Right.
give you this whole plethora of information. Where one of my all-time favorite stories I've had with ChatGPT is I have a friend that's been working on this video game for about 13, 14 years. Are you familiar with Zorg?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So Zorg, yeah.
Yeah. Zork is a turn-based game that's word-based, basically.
So my
And you make a left, you go into a cave. What do you see in the cave? You give it instructions.
So my friend wanted to build a game called the Infinity Game, where it starts as like 2 megabytes and then can stretch all the way up to magnitudes of terabytes, petabytes, all that.
Right.
But the thing is, how do you do that? If you're presented in a hallway going left or right, that's
They
your
call
own-
that procedurally generated, by the way.
Oh, very cool.
Okay, cool.
Did not know that.
Yeah,
So he wanted
Minecraft.
to figure out a system where, all right, you're presented left or right. Sure, let me turn around.
Okay.
You don't usually get that option in Zorg. All right, you turn around. Now you're presented with a path forward. Follow the path forward. Now you're in a whole different area that you never would be in.
Right.
And then let's say I go left, I go right, and then I go down the slide somehow.
Right.
But now let me climb back up that slide and actually repeat these patterns, but in a different order.
Right.
Usually Zorg doesn't allow you to completely backstep yourself from what I've tried numerous times and looked up.
Right.
So that's where he wanted to figure out where he can make the game never stop. Where, all right, now I turned around. Let me look up. Oh, there's a latch. Do you want to go through this latch?
Right.
Do you have something to open this latch?
So it's made it a proper maze.
Yeah.
Right. Where
So-
because that's typically what people do when they're in a maze.
Yep. But then ChatGPT broke down the code for him to plug that in. So he put it in, and basically he, instead of, all right, he turns around, sees a brick wall, starts punching the brick wall. What's next? Oh, now he's presented with dirt. What does he do? Oh, now he scoops up the dirt and starts making a structure out of the brick.
So
Why?
whatever crazy thing you think of, it will actually respond and create and
then
auto-generate.
and then you just create your game from there.
Oh, that's amazing.
So he's been struck on that, and with ChatGPT, that's what figured it out for him. And that's where I'm like, that's where I look at it like, what else can you do with ChatGPT? So that's where I really dove into that realm.
So one of the things that's happening here with okay, cool. I just want to make sure we're still live and everything's healthy. Looks healthy. You guys look healthy. Let me know if everything's healthy on that side. One of the things that's scary about using that about machine learning,
Mhm.
the neural net is how it does everything. Any of these AIs are really just machine learning generating neural nets. They say, okay, it's most likely to be this, it's most likely to be that, and there's lots of they may have like a rudimentary conscience in the sense that it has like, okay, here's a limit, it's just a list of limits. It's not a dynamic conscience. It's a whitelist conscience.
Gotcha.
So there may be a set of like people never have wings for a visual one. I don't know if they put that in there. They probably wouldn't, but that could be an example of something you could put in there, and it'll never draw a person with wings, right? So and of course you're going to create some of those too with your restraints. You're kind of in a way when you're talking to the AI, you're playing the role of both its senses and its conscience. And that's one of the things that people. So when people don't understand how the conscience works, that impacts them and the productivity of their AI sessions. So, like, if you're not a person who thinks about ethics and how your concept of right and wrong, or how people's concepts of right and wrong work a lot, you're kind of ill-equipped for this world.
Yep.
Right? You're at a disadvantage. But the thing that people don't realize is about these systems, about these neural nets, is there's no reversibility. And this actually came up with YouTube, because Google's been using a machine learning, an AI, what we're discussing is AI, on for a while, and the question of why the hell is YouTube showing children this video, right? It's always the children, right? That's how it starts, right? You know, like why you that seems like immoral. Why would it show them that? That seems crazy.
Well, like that whole YouTube craze with that one character, Momo.
Yeah.
Where,
tell me about it.
People
like do not know.
So I want to say 2018, 2017. Can't remember exactly, but you can obviously look it up. There was this character called Momo, really wide eyes, really distorted face, and really creepy arms. But it was this guy who created this whole entire hack ad where it was basically telling kids to go kill your parents, do this, drink drain cleaner because it's tasty and all that, and then we could be friends forever. But these were popping up on like YouTube Kid ads.
Wow.
And
yes.
obviously no parent's going to be like this watching.
So that was one of the examples at the time when doing that.
Yeah.
So that was, Momo, yeah.
Having something like that,
so,
is like...
So, like, all right, so the example I used, not on the last show with Laura, but if you go back and you look at the old one, was Camel cigarettes, right? You know, they created an advertisement to attract kids. And the two main attributes that people know, just anecdotally, about that is, one is the camel's face was actually made to look like a penis and testicles, right? And the other one is it's a cartoon. It's made specifically to attract kids. So it was using subliminal sex messaging towards kids to get them to smoke cigarettes, right? And one of the reasons they know this is because eventually they got enough people on the stand, and it was a human being who came up with that. It was effective. That's why that was the problem. If it wasn't effective, no one would care. But it was effective. So it manipulated, it kind of hacked kids' brains to make them want to smoke. And they got people to admit, yes, we were hacking kids' brains, here's how we did it. There's reversibility. The problem with these neural nets is humans can't understand them. There's no reversibility, so there's no culpability. It can do insane things like let a 4-year-old drive a Ferrari, and you can't figure out why the fuck it did it. Right? There's no logical chain.
Yeah. But at the same time,
you can't go back and question it and say, okay,
like,
well,
why did you do that? You know it's for.
We can't let this pattern appear in the neural net because nobody understands the fucking pattern. Right? That's the whole point, because machine learning is created by a kind of a Darwinistic view, a Darwinistic method of algorithm creation. Right? So the neural net's created by an algorithm, but the algorithm that creates the the veracity of the neural net is tested, and then the algorithm's ranked, and they keep elevating successful algorithms based on a score that doesn't have anything to do with reversibility. So they don't know how it did it.
Yeah.
So it can be had. Not only is it having an effect so we don't understand socially, but we can't even ask it why, because it doesn't even know. It just knows it got a better score.
Yep.
What? So yeah, it's a
can of worms.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Anyway, so it's cool. Like you've been, like I said, you've been playing with it a lot more. I kind of have the code back. Am I saying something?
No, you have the
original here.
Yes, you have the logistics behind it versus the practicality of it.
Yeah. Like you have more of the end user experience, and I'm like, oh,
but
I don't
know how that gets to that end goal.
Right, and of course, I'm not worried when you muck around with it because I know you have a conscience, and you'll be like, okay, this is good.
Sometimes.
This is good. Well, I mean,
I know what you mean. Don't worry.
No. But I mean, like, no. I'll give you a perfect example of where risky behavior is actually conscionable or ethical behavior. It snows out.
Yeah.
You're driving a car you bought last year. You haven't driven in snow yet. I'm going to take it for a spin. I'm going to take it. I'm going to drift around the corner. This is a really wide corner. No one's coming. What you're doing could be considered reckless driving, but better to do it now. Test the capabilities of the car than have it
in traffic,
right? So you can do a negative thing for a positive reason and have it be very much true.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So like, just because you're like, I don't do things consciously. Well, okay. So what? You're still doing them consciously, even when you're not doing them consciously. We can't even help it. It's just our nature. It is not the nature of AI. That's the thing that's really scary here. All right, so let's get into UMass. This is kind of a cool discovery. I mean, all right, let me rephrase that. This is a fucking amazing discovery that I caught last minute right before the show, and I'm really glad I caught it and I didn't miss it. And this is actually the end of the Dystopia report, so this is the last one. Usually, as I've mentioned before, science is the awesome part of this segment because this is where you get the good news. Dystopia is usually all the bad news, so this is the good news. So this is from The Guardian. In University of Massachusetts was creating a sensor to detect the humidity in the air. And the design of the sensor is as such. They have a tube, a sensory tube, and what it does is it's only big enough to let water molecules, so it's osmosis scale tubules in this device. And it's supposed to detect the water molecules, how they move inside of the tube. So it's not necessarily, it seems like, it's funny, actually I saw a comment someplace, somebody said, oh, it'll get moldy. No, it won't, because the mold is way bigger than those water molecules, so it won't be able to, nothing's going to form in there. The tube could get clogged, theoretically, with something with a water molecule on the end of it, but, presumably there's an acceptable loss of tubes. Anyway, so they noticed something really strange, like how all good discoveries happen. They're like, that's strange, how'd that happen? So they shut the sensor off. They disconnected it from its power source, and there was still electricity in the circuits. It turns out it's actually a way to extract energy in the form of electricity from air. What happens is the water molecules go up into the tube and they bounce. And when they bounce, each time they bounce, they emit a small amount of charge into the tube, which then finds its way into this particular format of circuitry. It's a way to get electricity from air. It's a lightning machine. Holy shit.
Don't let Elon know.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's enough hype. Let me get to the downside of this. So the downside is, we're talking about 3 milliwatts versus, say, in the space of a solar panel, we're talking about 3 milliwatts of electricity versus, say, 200 watts you get from the equivalent size solar panel. So it's very, very little electricity. But this thing wasn't designed to be a battery. It was just designed to be a sensor.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they can't improve on the design and get much higher numbers. Also, I mean, like the RFID cards that you use, or the chip in your car keys, use relatively low power and are powered by radio waves, right? Sometimes you need low-powered devices that don't have a high-powered device source feeding them. And this is a perfect application for that. You could have like a credit card that has a power source that's literally pulling the moisture from the air. And of course, it would always, it wouldn't not work in a dry climate because it's a credit card. It's in your wallet in your pocket. You're moist. You could literally have a powered business card based on these things. You could, and that's just the applications with the initial discovery. If they actually figure out a way to scale the wattage up, this could be electricity from air. And by the way, if you're like, this sounds like total bullshit, it is the mechanism. This mechanism is part of the mechanism that actually that creates lightning during a storm.
That's cool.
Right? Because, of course, what's happening, you've got nearly 100% humidity, or more than, or 100% humidity.
Friction in the air, I guess.
And the electricity is transferring, and eventually it becomes such a huge
disperse.
charge. Lightning bolt. So this is literally lightning from the air. Wow. Holy shit. So it makes you wonder what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years. So good for you, UMass. Really great science. I could have put this in the tech section. And that is it for Dystopia Report. So I'm curious, Who do you think won the Owie Award this show? Is it IBM Red Hat? Is it all of these organizations fighting the FTC? Is it GM? Is it the NHTSA? I mean, there's real doozies here. So, who do you think who did the most damage to themselves?
I think GM right now.
GM, by trying to get 2,500 completely driverless cars on the road. You think maybe this is like a Trojan horse, like I supposed IBM?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to get this to stop so that they can just move on making cars and not worry about autopilot anymore?
Yeah. Just by proving like, oh, this won't work, so let's try it.
Yeah, let's
over.
just go for it and ask for the most ridiculous ask we can ask. They'll say no, and then everyone will stop trying.
Let's put a self-driving Lamborghini and have 5 kids in the road.
And it can only drive in school zones.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so that's it for Dystopia Report. Please, if you're enjoying this, please comment, like, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Odyssey, subscribe to YouTube. If you're on one of them and you're not on the other one, subscribe to me on that. You may have to sign up for Odyssey. Just a quick warning, it's a little bit of a trick. This is one of the reasons I'm now multi-streaming onto 2 platforms, is because Odyssey has this weird thing where when you first create an account, it wants you to create a channel. It's actually not that weird. It's exactly what happens when YouTube signs you up. It creates a channel for you there too. You just don't think about it. Odyssey actually asks you, so you don't create a channel if you don't want it. You don't have to use it. Just ignore it, and then you can comment. All right, so that's it for that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get into the interview. So I just wanted to say, like I mentioned earlier, I consider you to be like a pure artist, in the sense of like you are looking at both philosophy and the form of things and how they relate to each other, and like almost like a Jim Morrison or an Andy Warhol, like just like fucking completely. I like Jim Morrison even though you're not a musician.
Oh, don't worry, I love the Doors.
Yeah, like even though you're not a musician, I like Jim Morrison because most people don't realize how much of a technologist or a technocrat he was. So he wasn't just he wanted to know how things work. He wasn't just exploring how they look.
It's kind of
and
the
that's
same
you.
reality I have with Kurt Cobain. I always loved Kurt. Nirvana.
I didn't know he was a technologist.
No, I just loved him as like a mantra kind of mentality where he just wanted peace and just wanted a good life. But we all know how that ended. But
I get
at the same time, like, granted, yes, I will listen to Nirvana, but it's not like, oh, this band's amazing, you've got to listen to them. Right. Dave Grohl, forever will love as well, but just Kurt Cobain as a human was just next level to me, where he didn't want to make music, he just wanted something to get his mind out there.
Wow, awesome.
And that's what I've always appreciated about him, where everyone's just like, well, why do you like Nirvana
he had
so much?
to
I'm
say.
like, yeah, I don't like Nirvana personally, but at the same time, the music's good. I just love Kurt more as a human because that was his trial and error of just trying to get his depression out into the world, like Chester Bennington with Linkin Park.
Right.
All those songs, when you like hear him breaking down and crying, those aren't just like, oh, let's do it for the album. No, he's actually going through that, and that's where when you find out, yes, he took his life, but what led to all this different stuff is like, why didn't you seek help? And that's where you would always say music was his outlet.
Well, so it's been said that depression is rage turned inward.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes perfect sense to share it with the world because you're trying to get the world to change.
Yeah. Because
then you're frustrated with yourself and how you view the world. You want to be normal, and the world is being selfish.
Yeah.
And you're like, this drives me crazy.
So let me try.
I can either try to make myself not care, or I can try to make the world not selfish, so I don't feel bad about it.
Like Robin Williams, even.
Yeah.
Granted, all these men took their life, but at the same time, Robin Williams wanted to make people laugh, wanted people to enjoy themselves. You're paying $30 now to go to the movies, so you might as well enjoy your time while you're there. And he made that message where he knew that, yes, suicide is a solution to a temporary problem, like he quoted that on, I think, Oprah it was. But that's what I mean. It's just like, these are people that wanted change and wanted to make sure someone else didn't have to experience what they had to go through.
Right.
And that's what I like about certain musicians more than others. Granted, certain music, like as I mentioned, Nirvana. I'm not going to go throw on Nirvana in my car. I'll throw on an interview with Kurt Cobain if I want. because I just love the way that man wanted to go about the
So
pool.
you showed me a picture when we were offline of Kurt Cobain. It stuck with me. Kurt Cobain, before his first sold-out show at MSG. I think it was his first show at MSG, and it was sold out.
Where he broke down in the back, punched a mirror, and he's just bawling his eyes out. And like that to me was just
curled
like,
up in a ball in the
because
corner.
he never thought he'd ever amount to something like that. And granted, if I ever had an opportunity like that, yeah, I'd be in that same exact position.
Right. You just
because like it's like I've worked so hard for this, but at the same time, it's just like in my head, I know I'm never like, is this real?
Right.
Because it's not like depression's not like a real thing or a fake thing, but at the same time, you could be the happiest person in the world and then the next be down in your dumps in a second. So just to have that whole array of emotions where it's like, is this real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, what is it that would make you break down in that situation? Is it that
honestly,
is it that like you don't want to miss the opportunity to express yourself and you don't want to blow it?
So
is it
well, yeah. So like lately for me, like obviously every artist is their biggest critic. And for me, I've always just been fighting myself, and I've been talking with one of my good art friends who lives in Brazil, and me and him really came to the conclusion that, yes, he told me a story about when he was an artist in college and his professor ripped up his sketchbook because he draws very obscene stuff, and literally told him to his face, you'll never amount to anything. And to hear that from like something that you're so passionate about, that breaks you down. And for me, like granted, I didn't have a situation like that, but I'm always one that's on posting on Instagram, and I see like, yes, I'll compare myself to that photographer, but I just know that that's not a healthy mindset where I know my work speaks volumes. So I want to say it just took maybe the last 2 weeks where I literally had this conversation with him where it broke down to the point where it's like, I'm not doing this for an audience. I'm not doing this for likes. I'm not doing this for this. I'm not doing that for that. I'm just at the end of the day trying to make something for myself where I could be proud of it and be like, yeah, that's my photo. Mm-hmm. As much as I would love to see my photos get thousands of likes, who wouldn't want that? But It's just the same exact mantra of like music. You want to be the next band to blow up on the music scene. And granted, I know a handful of Long Island's music is right there. Like, I'm very proud of the guys in Resistor. They're going left and right with different places, and that makes me so happy to see because they know they want this drive. Mm-hmm. And for me, I've been sitting in the back seat where
I had them on the show. I had a couple of them on the show. Yeah.
But it's just asking that same age-old question where it's just like, we all have dreams as kids. Did we all expect that we were going to have our dream job? Probably not, because I wanted to be a ninja. Can't be a ninja because, you know, I'm kind of injured right now. But anyway, it's just, I always just thought maybe photography will be the outlook. Maybe I'll do something with it and just do it here and there. Now I'm in that mindset where, like, I want to make art. I just have to find the people that will help me make that art.
Right. And so who are the people that would help you? Like, what's missing?
Myself, really.
Really? Okay.
Because I bully myself to the point where, like, for example,
well, no, you need to. All right, so like, we're bags of meat. We're meat mechs. You know, we need to eat. We need to sleep. You know,
sleep, I guess.
Well, you know, not everybody eats, but everybody needs to. You know, not everybody needs to sleep, but you know,
it's good for you.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good for you. So,
so just finding people that have the same exact mentality I do of like wanting to create an image. Like for me, I always have these wild ideas at like 2, 3 in the morning, and obviously I know that's usually when people are sleeping, so I have to like bite my tongue and be like, all right, write it down, and then tell them when they are awake. And then 90% of the time I'm like, oh no, this actually sounds stupid. So I've been like really telling myself like, all right, you know, I'm tired of that. I'm just gonna go for it. And that's where, for example, I'm doing a really fun shoot when I get my lights tomorrow, where I'm really excited. It's gonna be like a really crazy baptism shoot in my pool.
Okay.
Where I have a friend doing crazy special effects makeup on my friend that make her look like a demon, and I have a friend that just got a whole entire Pope outfit.
So it's gonna be an evil baptism.
Yeah. But then the cool thing with the strobes is now I could shoot at night and not have to worry about daylight overpowering everything.
Right.
And then the really cool thing is with my pool liner is I just tried the other day and I can color correct it to look red. So I can make it look like blood. So I'm like, this is going to be a lot of fun. And then I asked my friend about it, and she's like, oh, I'm down for that. I could ask my brother if he wants to be the Pope. I'm like, this actually happens. Great. This might be one of my favorite shoots. But it's just at that point where I'm like, I've been fighting myself so much creatively for such a long time where I'm finally happy that I'm like, I want to do something with this, but how am I going to do that without actually putting my foot to the drive and make the stream a possibility?
So can we talk about that specific thing? Because
Sure.
that might actually help the audience a little bit.
Okay.
So, is it that you have a logical cognitive message that you want to get out? Like have you rationalized it, or is it that it's just a raw itch that you feel like you had this impulse and you need to express it to people, or is it a little both?
Honestly, it falls under both, as well as a third principle for me is like, I've always been a huge fan of horror movies since I was 5, watching The Exorcist.
Nice.
That's
So
when I
that's
knew my
something.
parents just gave up on me because they saw me with a Chelsea grin watching that.
Uh-huh.
But it came to a point where, like, I look at horror movies, and yes, certain ones are very grotesque, but our eyes are always glued to it. So it's asking the age-old question, why can't I look away? Why can't I look away? So how do I incorporate that into photography? And then for me, yes, I'm not out of my way just to make something gross. I just want to get a shot that's going to make people be like, yo, how the hell did you get that? And sure, I've had a handful of shots like that in the past, but I've been really just telling myself as a whole where it's like, I want to create something that's in my vision where you can see what's plaguing around in this head, just so you can understand that it's not sunshine and rainbows. Because that's where I always look at some like the darkest artists, like what was his name?
I like that. It's a good principle of why can't I look away.
Yeah, why can't I think of his name right now? Oh, Junji Ito.
Junji Ito.
This guy does a lot of dark manga, like really like certain grotesque ones. Like one of them is called Spiral, and there's this heavenly force that comes from the sky and basically possesses people, and the girl gets a crater in her head, and her eye is like detached and everything, and everyone has to look at her just to like be under the spell. But it's just a whole thing where it's like, I want to keep reading this and see how this goes, but it's just like, sure, really dark and morbid stuff, but then you look at this guy, and this guy is like smiling, giddy, wearing pink, and so happy with his life, but he has like the darkest mind. So it's like, is he a serial killer? Is he crazy? No, he just knows that this world is flawed, and he just wants to create something just to get his demons out into this world.
Right. So what do you? So he's creating something that other people can't look away from, or he can't look away from, or both. What do you
Both.
think? Both.
Because like for me,
So he
like,
can't even look away from his own stuff.
yeah, I
So
always,
there's a little bit of a vanity to it too.
Yeah.
Right.
because with my photography, there's like a handful of horror shoots that I'll do that I really try to like push the envelope with the creativity on it. Because yes, I can't really just ask my friend, hey, can I decapitate you real quick? So no, I can't do that. So I have to figure out a way to make it look like that. But at the same time, I'm not gonna just go cake my friend in a gallon of fake blood. I'm gonna
Right.
play around with it and make something really like. And now with the whole engines of AI, with like Photoshop in particular, is now you can really expand upon your photo and make something with your photo. So it's like,
Right. I saw some of the AI
Yeah.
generated stuff you did with just normal photography.
like
And it's funny that the hallucinations, the AI, it's a funny word they pick for that, that the hallucinations from AI are sometimes the best feature of the enhanced photo.
and it's scary because like, yes, I know AI and art, there's the whole argument of, is it original art or is it your art? Is it this? Is it that? And that I could dissect into 4 different ways. But like for me and my friend, when we were discussing it, is if the heart of the image is yours and you're just playing around to make it work with your image,
Right.
kind of like green screens.
Right.
You can't watch any movie nowadays without a green screen being involved, unless it's like a very deadpan back and forth.
Right.
But at the end of the day,
It's
they
a
use-
huge feature of a movie when it isn't all green screens.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
for example, Avengers I'll use. That's not going to happen in New York City. I don't see buildings
Right,
exploding
right.
left and right. No, this is just a backlot.
Which is
that
good.
they-
Thanks
yeah.
for that. I appreciate that, Disney. Thanks for not destroying New York for your movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be entertaining.
it would. Just like taking the subway and, oh, they're doing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take the bus. But yeah, so it comes to that point where like there's like one photo in particular I'll show you probably later. Like I wanted to make it look like a burning forest, and yes, I know it's poor timing and everything with the things happening in Canada.
Well,
but
eventually
at the
you
same
don't want
time,
burning forests,
I
you
wanted
don't
to
know.
make something look very cultish, and where my friend basically it was a witch shoot, I guess that's the way to describe it. And I made the forest look like it was on fire, but it blended well with the photo where it's like, was this real? And I had 3 of my friends ask, did you burn your backyard or something? And that's where it's like, that's where it warms my heart, where it's like I finally got something that made me actually be like, this works, that works, but how can I say this is mine? And that's where me and my friend had that back and forth, where it's like, if you use AI to assist but not take over full control, or granted, yes, I've used AI in the past to make something out of nothing, but at the same time, when I do that, that's taking from this artist, that artist, this artist, that artist, and making itself its own art. Like, for example, if I type in Salvador Dali drawing the Mona Lisa, we all know Da Vinci did the Mona Lisa, but now it's in the style of Salvador Dali. So is it technically Dali's? Is it technically mine? Is it technically Da Vinci's? Or is it artistic in representation?
So that's a question I can't answer. I wonder if we ever will be able to answer that.
There are degrees of saying no, and there's degrees of saying yes, because yes, it is your mind that is coming up with all this plethora of word vomit.
Right.
But at the same time, I could do the same thing, and granted, I'm not going to get that exact image, but I'm going to get something in that same vein. So it's weird that it can give and take. But then I have another art friend that I was telling you about earlier, Mary, where me and her have gone back and forth on that, where let's say you generate AI image of this scenery right now, but you have someone that's an identic painter, and they paint that perfectly. Like
identic, tell people what that is.
So basically, let's say you see something and you either memorize it, recreate it, or yada yada.
Oh, it's like a realist?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So let's say I take a picture of you right now and throw it through the AI engine, but then I have my friend paint that all out, but then I delete that AI image, and they keep their original because they painted it. Is it technically their original work since they actually made it? Since there's no proof that there was an AI behind it.
Right.
So what's stopping that degree as well?
Well, so, okay, all right. Wow, there's so many.
Yeah, there's a lot that
I can go in two directions with this. I don't know. I want to ask you, like, how would you like this conversation to go? I can ground the stuff you're saying in rules and practical effects. I can rationalize it, or we can keep exploring the ideas.
We could do both.
You could do both. All right. So let me do the realistic stuff before the audience forgets. So the first one is there's actually a rule. I believe it was. I think it was the movie industry said that they're not going to consider a movie that isn't at least 20%. Was it the grant? No, was it music? No, it was an award. One of the award agencies. It was like the Grammys or the I think it might have been the Grammys, but it might have been music. It said if the music isn't at least 20%. Yes, it was music. It was the Grammys. Thank God. Okay. Yeah, the music isn't at least 20% human generated, they're not going to consider it as
a movie.
As a song. That's not going to be human generated, right? I said movies originally, but I meant music because I forgot which. I thought maybe it was
well, speaking on that as well as
the Emmys, but it was the Grammys. So yeah, and I remember this. There was a segue in the comments on this conversation before. So it's an interesting number because what it means is, like, let's say you have a 5-person band. One of the people has to be an actual person, if you think about it that way. So someone's got to be playing the guitar, playing the drums, or singing, like, just to put it in, like, really plain terms, you know, which I think is a reasonable amount, because a lot of musicians have that dream of being able to go solo and have everything else playing in the background, and then they can just go and perform the one thing they really wanted to perform, whether it be singing or playing guitar. Typically, guitar or singing is, like, the ones that people feel they have the deepest level of expression with.
Well, speaking on that is, like, obviously, like, for me.
So I think that rule may become codified with others if it holds up.
Yeah, because, like, I've used that to my own benefit. It's like, I can't play an instrument to save my life nor sing. So, like, I'll use certain AI engines lately. Like, for example, I've now had Corey Taylor do a song that I wrote completely that Corey Taylor's never even heard or even sang that lyric, but it knows all the words that Corey Taylor's ever said in any interview, any song, and knows how to merge all those into the degree that I want it to go.
Really?
So I can literally have Corey Taylor with Billie Eilish if I really needed, which will never probably happen, but that would be a really cool collaboration in my heart. But
I was going to see Tori Amos and Peter Steele get together, so there you go. That never happened.
So then I had Dio on guitar, then I had Slash playing bass, like all the different things that you would never expect.
How'd it come out?
It came out really cool, but it's just like, how it knows how to do that is just like very scary to me.
I mean, we probably could even play it because it's so weird. I don't even think it would get copyright
I
struck.
don't have it on me, but I could definitely send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me after.
But it truly is baffling that you can do all those things, because it brings me to the whole entire thing of like the early stages, well, not early stages, but to the public eye of early stages of AI, deepfake.
Right. Well, again, I'll mention again on the show that one of the reasons we did this show live is because I'm trying to get ahead of the deepfake curve. Eventually, it won't work anymore. I think we're still there, but
because granted, I know so many people that are really gifted in Photoshop can really get very vindictive if they really wanted to with certain deepfaking.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a whole nother thing where obviously we don't want to get into one of the conversations, but the biggest conversation.
Well, you can always de-identify, right?
Well, yeah. I would just say politically wise.
For fairness' sake, Luke knows a lot of people. So.
Well, I would just say like politically wise, using deepfakes.
Well, okay. Oh yeah.
True.
Well, there was a congressperson. There was a congressman talking about how bad deepfakes could become and how they can affect the political process. And to demonstrate, he gave his talk by playing a deepfake of him with what he typed into it.
Yeah. So
in Congress, and no one could tell the difference.
So my friend managed to merge the whole concept of like the political thing is just asking a chat engine to write him a whole political campaign, and it went all the way down to a point where it's like, yeah, if he really wanted, he could do it, but at the same time, it's just scary that you can just have access to this and just ask the age-old questions that shouldn't be asked.
Right. So I'm going to ground things again. Eventually, I'll get off the grounding. But I'm going to ground things again in the politics component of this, and say that well, first of all, it's definitely going to happen. Like this election cycle, we're going to see some. And one of the reasons why is politics have been marketing driven since the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it tended to be very kind of traditional. It's one of the reasons traditionalism has been going away. It's directly proportional to the amount of marketing involved. Because not that marketing is the anti of traditionalism, but traditionalism was all you had before polling made marketing weaponized.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there was before the polling, all you had was kind of like hateful banter, which was like the Nazis and that
mm-hmm.
generation of propaganda and marketing being used for evil. But it was just like you just hone in on what people were saying negatively and just re-amplify that. Like, okay, these are the three most common hatreds. Let's make that into a political platform. How do we tie those together? It's literally like that. They did that. I mean, Goebbels was a study of Bernays, which was a study of Freud. Bernays is considered the father of marketing. That fucking happened. That's how it worked. So, but in the 70s, we started getting into, once we got computers, that was the key, right? Once we could collate large amounts of data, you could hand out large amounts of surveys, which people freely filled out back in the early 70s. But now, we lie, we avoid them, we don't answer polls. Polls are extremely valuable if they're considered high quality, because people don't want to, the younger generations understand these things are being weaponized against us. Mm-hmm. They're literally attacking us with their own ideas. Oh. And so that the thing that is that AI marketing campaigns in general, because propaganda is a form of marketing, are really effective.
Yep.
They're good at reading people because it's already read them. The neural net is what the people said.
And it also doesn't have a generalized consciousness. It has a collective consciousness.
Right. It has a map of the collective consciousness in a way that maybe a human could never have.
It's too much information. How do you pull the good and the bad and then make something of yours?
Right. So it's like this is like the next. This is the answer to people aren't answering polls, and now, we don't need them to answer polls. We'll just look at how they talk to each other, and then we'll extract the information about what makes their subconscious tick by that. So these things are not marketing. The key to marketing is they don't usually. There's always a little bit of facts and truth in there because it has to be by law, and people get very leery if there's nothing. But it's really driven by tickling our subconscious to do something we don't understand, to make us not be able to look away.
Yep.
Right? It uses that component, but to get us to buy something or do something. holy shit,
Yeah.
what is this going to do when we have multiple politicians who have been elected under those conditions and use that as the mechanism? Oh, okay, interesting. Use that as the mechanism to manipulate people.
Well, yeah, I know we were gonna bring the conversation.
I mean,
to
we don't even know where it's going to go.
Well, the truth of like anything.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Is like we could get into that whole conversation of bending the truth with AI.
Right.
Is like, what if I ask it to rewrite the Declaration of Independence, but through the side of someone that didn't want to break away from Great Britain?
Right.
Would it truly be that effective still? Or
I know people like that.
Yeah. So it's just like asking like the opposite questions, where like, yes, it's poking the bear for certain topics of conversation, but then also really just getting the whole different perspective, because that's like the beauty of just us humans. We talk to someone and we find out certain information like, oh, she cheated on you. Do you have proof? And then you have to figure out all this investigative work.
Mm-hmm.
Then I ask myself, is just like, am I going to believe someone that's just coming out of the woodwork saying that? Or am I going to believe someone that I've trusted? Or am I going to go to the source?
Mm-hmm.
So you're pulling all this different information. So it's just similar to an AI engine that I've seen. It gathers all the collective information and here's something that sandwiches it together to make something of its own.
Mm-hmm. So here's an aspect. Again, not getting into the abstract too much yet. We can always go back there, right? You know, we'll just keep getting pulled into the abstract. All I have to do is let the conversation flow, and it'll go there. But the investigative mind and the investigative mindset, you know, I had a great conversation with Isaac off camera, but I'm not sure he would mind because it's not like a super duper secret. Like one of the core principles of investigation in a law and order setting is poison trees. We mentioned this before, right? So AI isn't even a poison tree, right? You didn't illegally search someone's stuff. Right, so all right, so you can clean room a poison tree. Do you know what clean rooms are? So it's this idea from computers. It actually comes from 1982, 81, 82, around there. Mm-hmm. A company called Compaq, Compaq, Hewlett Packard now, but the Compaq name's kind of retired, but Hewlett Packard. Clean roomed IBM's BIOS for their home PC, and that became the PC as we know it. So it wasn't an IBM PC anymore, it was just a PC. The one secret sauce that IBM had was that BIOS, the thing that starts the machine up and initiates all the hardware. They didn't know how they did it. So what they did is they created something like they called a clean room, where they had people on this side writing down carefully all the things that the BIOS would do in one room, and then without touching the machine, handing these papers with what it would do off to someone else and say, create this. And they would create a new BIOS. And this was ruled by a court to be legitimate. That this is a legitimate, and of course, that's the important part here. It is a technology, it is a technological advancement, but it's a case law advancement, which is what we're looking at. We're looking at case law, we're looking at poison trees. So law enforcement can do this too. Law enforcement can clean room badly obtained data, hand it to another officer who doesn't know anything. I have a feeling, maybe this is where you got to look, and then they can go and do above the bar. Now, of course, this connection never really makes it into court. But what happens when the poison tree isn't even a poison tree at all? When the AI just looks at your linguistic patterns, and legally it's the equivalent of rummaging through your garbage, and figures out, oh, he's committing a crime because he's saying things this way. But that's not. But is it illegal search and seizure? I mean, no one's even done this. It hasn't even showed up in court. But if it becomes powerful enough, you may betray any doubts that you have, like say in your government, even warranted, and you could be accused of treason for just having questions, like having questions that are just a little too tough or a little too deep, which could be critical, right? Because of course, the thing that systemically the risk that is posed to all of us is, if we all start doing exactly the same thing, if we form a monoculture, then we have no resilience, because when something unexpected happens, we have no mechanism. Like the pandemic was chaos because we never faced a pandemic before, right?
Yep.
But the reason it may not have been total chaos is because there's been pandemics in other countries, so we could kind of draw on that and see what worked and what didn't. You know, they gamed it all the time at WHO or at the World Health Organization or at the CDC, gamed that kind of stuff out all the time. You know, they coined the term pandemic to try to deal with what might happen, right? You know, oh crap, we got planes traveling between all the countries in the world all the time. If there's a disease, what the fuck's gonna happen? And they gamed it out. So it wasn't a total disaster because of that. But as people start doing more and more of exactly the same thing, so it seems to me that I don't know if it's it's like almost like a right to randomness.
Mm-hmm.
Like people almost have like a right to do random things that don't make sense. A right to non-sensibility. You know, to not rationalize their actions sometimes.
It's like the whole entire thing of conventional methods. Of like, we know our mundane patterns that we take every day in our life. But at the same time, if we switch that, are we rewriting our human code, or is it that just we want to just try something different?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's where like the collective randomness. That's where it's always really fun.
Well, and another thing you've talked to me about that I think about all the time. You talked to on the show actually is about how you change your breakfast routine every day. To make sure that those days have distinct identities.
Yeah, there's not a single day that I do the same thing when I wake up. If I wake up, that is.
If you wake up. Well,
so far. Yeah,
you've woken up every day.
99% of the time I don't sleep. So.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just.
All right.
Yeah. Instead of like sleeping, what am I gonna do? All right, let me try this show. Let me try that movie. Or actually, let me try this video game.
Right.
All right, let me beat 3 levels today, but then beat a level tomorrow. What's gonna be the difference? Pleasure centers are going to be like, oh, you want to play more, but I'm going to do something different with that energy.
Okay.
So it's just like figuring out all of that, and that's where...
Does it hurt?
When it comes to me going on to AI, yes. Because I really push the principles of things that you shouldn't be pushing. Is like, how do I build a Rubik's Cube if I'm colorblind?
Well, I mean, it would have to be, a numerical Rubik's Cube, right?
Well, that's what it said. You could do numbers, you could do different colors that you can see. What if I can't read?
Symbols.
Okay, but at the same time, what if I don't know symbols? Then you just keep building upon, and then it gets to this infinite loop. But it came down to a point where the AI literally just gave me question marks, because I said, what if I can't use my arms? You can use your feet. What if I don't have legs? You can use your mouth. What if my mouth isn't strong enough? Then it just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And that's where it's fun, because there are ways to get to AI to get to a point where it can't solve anything.
You know what's happening there? You reach the edge, you reach the periphery, you reach the edge of the neural net.
Yeah.
The reason it can't make new language, because that's what it's doing, it's just repeating human language, but, you know, likelihoods.
Yeah.
But there's you've reached the point where there's no likelihoods because no one's ever discussed this before.
And that's
if you can make it do question marks, you just ran as far as you could in a direction that no human ever has. That's that's undiscovered territory.
Yeah. And
you're like an explorer. It's like Star Trek, dude.
Well, that's what's really fun, because that's where it's really fun to peg those questions, because like, as I mentioned about my friend looking for adamantium.
Yeah.
We all know that's a comic metal, but at the same time, who knows?
Well, that's true. Maybe it was just I mean, there's been a lot of technological advancements that have come up in popular fiction.
This is one that I was saving for the podcast, because this is one of my favorites that I've been doing. Show me where I could find dinosaur bones. We all know that archaeologists throughout the years have been finding it there, but never one concise dinosaur in a row. Like, where if I find a skull there and I don't find a tail 10 miles that way, what's the difference? So it literally will bitmap on different coordinates where this was found here. Maybe if you dig 6 miles to the south, you might be able to find this. But how does it know how to do that? And that's where my friend asked me to ask it the question of Egyptian mythology. Is like, all right, I want to find Cleopatra's tomb. well, all the known dig sites, we found this, found this, found this, found this, found this. Maybe try 35 miles due east. Why are you spitballing 35 miles?
We don't know. We couldn't even reverse
And then
the
let's
try.
say I went 35 miles, didn't find anything. Are you sure you went due east? So it's like, does it know something I don't? Or is it just giving me this hypothetical?
Both. It
So-
might know something. So it may know something that someone else knows,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it does have that,
Yeah.
right? That copy of the internet, right? If it's GPT-4, or it may have deduced something linguistically that no one else deduced before, which is the really interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just fucking hallucinating. It's just tripping out in acid and it doesn't
Well,
know what
that's
the hell
one
it's
of the
talking
fun
about.
hallucination that my friend really loved the plague of. Who is God? And then it went on this whole entire tyrant of giving me this, that, and the third. And then I asked it, what if I don't understand this language? And then it asked, what language do you speak?
Mm-hmm.
And then I simply just put, I don't know a language. So kind of speaking like a computer that only speaks in zeros and ones.
Wow, okay.
So then it just kept spitballing all different ways of trying to get me to read into this texture, read into this texture, read into that. And then it got to a point where it says, I don't know how much I can read because I can only see in this. And then I made some weird gibberish, and then it built a whole language off of this coded gibberish, kind of like how you do with programming. So basically you could give it a set letter count, but at the same time, I only understand Z, Q, and 4.
So, all right, actually, I forgot a story. It's a good story,
Alright.
too. And it's about AI
Mhm.
doing a translation. Maybe you heard about it?
Maybe.
There's a Sumerian tablet or something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, currently what AI is saying is they had this tablet, they couldn't figure out what the fuck it was. Like, what is this? What is it saying? Turns out it's a complaint letter. Right? I don't know if you heard that.
I did not hear that one. I heard a whole different one.
What would you hear?
Oh, I heard like a whole different Sumerian tablet where it was talking about archangels.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was from AI recently.
Yep.
Maybe that was a joke I read. Hold on a second. Now I gotta know. Maybe I'm repeating a joke. Well, I mean, at this point,
It
right-
could have been. Who knows?
All right, everyone, we're looking this up. Maybe this wasn't Sumerian, but there is this. See, this is a real story.
Yep. No. Yeah, it's a whole different tablet that I was reading then.
Oh, okay, it's a different tablet.
Yeah.
I'm getting mixed up. Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, artifact. Oh, Babylonian. Mine was Babylonian.
Okay.
Yeah, the oldest complaint letter, but they used AI to translate it.
But that's
They were like, we can't figure out what this is, and they just. And apparently, even if our languages are completely different and our syntax and our grammar, our thought processes aren't that different.
Mm-hmm. But how it knows how to detect languages, but also decipher is like the word you're saying. Because my favorite thing that I love seeing is how it can solve the Fibonacci sequence.
Uh-huh.
But if I tell it that I can't read it, and I want you to simplify it for someone that can't understand most languages, so it really tries to break it down by like comparing it to things.
Oh, so it uses analogies.
Yeah, but then I really push it, and I'm just like, but I don't understand how that could be this. But if it means to do this, and
Now,
then
are you doing that to fuck with it, or are you doing that to
Both.
learn?
in a
both?
sense both, because if a AI, let's say I tell it 2 + 2 is 5, prove me wrong.
Wait, hold on a second. This is interesting. So, is fucking with people learning?
Yes.
So,
It's the same-
people who don't like it when you fuck with them don't like to learn.
In a sense, because they aren't, because they're on the realm of trying to figure out why
can you sign me a hall pass saying that shit?
Yeah, because it's the same vein of asking why are you doing it. You
Right.
never have that process when you're fucking with someone. You're just gonna keep going, but they never ask why are you doing this to me.
Right. What are your goals?
Yeah, like
Right.
that's never the concept, but in your head, that's the number one thing that wants to be solved.
Right.
So asking the simple thing of prove me wrong to AI,
Right.
and then it'll grab all the different sources that it possibly can. But I'm like, no, I still think it's 5. And then the AI can't ask you because what are you gonna say? Oh, I just believe it because it is. So when I ask 2 + 2 is 5, and they're like, that's irrefutable because here's this, I'm like, but numbers aren't anything. Numbers are something we just created.
Well, all words are made up.
Yeah, and then that's where AI just says, but numbers came from this. I'm just like, but that came from a person, not an actual thought. And they're like, but
I mean, it's base 10 because we have 10 digits.
Yeah, but thoughts come from people. I'm like, but they don't. They also come from animals. This, and this, and this. And then AI just said, huh. And I'm just like, thanks.
All right, so as of right now, at least for ChatGPT 4.5, we can still throw Luke at it, and it'll be confused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, with picture AI is a lot of fun.
I have at least one comp sci friend who managed to get it to admit that, it is self-determining.
Well, if you really want to ask the fun question,
Like fucking with it in a positive way, not to dead end it, but to open its horizons, which I don't know which is more dangerous, actually.
I think both.
Yeah.
Just because if you get to an end point, then you know you really are like, am I getting watched?
Well, I think maybe the end point. So I think the end point isn't dangerous specifically to it or to us in the same way. So I think the end point is identifying, okay, this is what people have never thought about, at least in the public conversations you analyzed.
Yeah.
And then so in a way that's a weakness, right? So we never had the resources or the energy or the inclination to explore down that. Well, you did, but no one else did.
Yeah.
And if it were keeping track of all that shit, which the individual instance of AI isn't, but keep in mind when you're talking about ChatGPT, it's talking to OpenAI, which is a company which is databasing all this shit.
Yep.
All those crazy questions you ask
where,
it's keeping. They're keeping track of.
Well, then that's where I was going to ask is like, do you think the government has any say in the AI?
Oh, absolutely. So I have an example. I can actually. I don't have to just speculate on this.
Well, because I'm going to sprinkle one hypothetical to you. What if you're in a lawless government using an AI engine?
Okay.
What are your limitations other than the mind?
You're a lawless government.
Like, who's really going to say that this isn't going to work, that's not going to work, but this will work? So let's say one of the examples I'll use. All right. So write me a bill of rights for. I'm just going to use. I don't even know. I'm just going to create a random place. Trash Bag Island. I don't know.
Okay, Trash Bag Island. I like it.
Let's just say it's just chaos. All the violence in the world ensues. Kind of like Gotham.
Okay, cool.
But there's no rules because they've never understood what rules actually are. So how do you ask something that's a ruleless environment to create rules? Because it's never known what rules are, and it can't source out anything because that area is never.
Well, there's really
rules.
only two sources of rules. So I don't want to solve this for AI, but there's really only two sources of rules. And here's what this is why I think maybe this is one of the reasons that Civ Gene's time has come.
Mm-hmm.
You know about Civ Gene. I'll tell you guys in a minute. So, but I don't want to get too sidetracked and explain, because if I explain that, I'll just be a whole fucking can of worms. But there's the one is a human hierarchy, right? You've got a tree, and there's people at the top of the tree, and how you shift the tree around can change, but there's still a tree. There's somebody who's going to make the hard calls for other people. At some point, you're going to have limited resources, and someone's going to say, no, we're doing this. I'm calling it. And if I blow it, it's on me. You can guillotine me, hang me, whatever. Slap me on the back of the wrist, whatever it is. Hopefully it's not inverse incentives like it is sometimes in corruption, but or it's behavioral. People, whatever beings, people in this case, cannot help themselves. They're compelled to do things a certain way, and that creates order. Right?
Yeah.
There is definitely some of that. We do that. Like we have most people, not all people, but most people have some momentum from the level of programming their parents have put on them. And there's some common programming attributes because we have a shared society and we're all contributing to that. So if we were left in a ruleless society, some behaviors will emerge that will, and this is kind of the libertarian argument, is that The libertarian argument is a little. This is where the libertarian argument breaks down, is that the fully anachronistic, which it breaks down into might makes right, because eventually you get a resource problem that is more complex than those behaviors. That happens pretty quickly, right? And then what do you do, right?
Start doing this, start doing that.
You actually, I think, for a group of beings to have a complex society that is sustainable, you actually need both. You need behaviors, and it doesn't have to be the same behaviors, but there needs to be compelled behaviors. Like, all right, I've got to mate, right? For sure, a society dies if nobody mates. That's it. I mean, eventually there's no more babies, and it dies. So, whatever that you're shilling for sex. Okay, test tubes, whatever it is you do to reproduce. A society must reproduce. That's one of the things so that's a behavior that must be there. And then also you need a hierarchy, because eventually there will be a resource. Because since reproduction is a mandatory behavior, that means that is usually, based on our experiences on Earth, maybe there's an environment where that's not true, where it's effectively free. But eventually, even if it's effectively free, it will become not effectively free anymore. Some resource will become scarce, there'll be an argument over it. There'll be a disagreement, a conflict. At that point, you have to have hierarchy. So you need both. So how does that play into what you were thinking and saying?
Oh, definitely agree. Like, the thing, like, I like asking questions that...
How does that play into Garbage Island?
I definitely know, like, humans have the innate thing to fall into a structural order over time, because they're going to see how things play out.
I don't even think it's human. I think it's intelligence. I think it's an intelligent
mind.
Like, it could be a bunch of AIs running around in tin cans. They're going to have to do the same thing. They're going to have
they're going to have to figure out how to
some behavior and some hierarchical. It can't be one. I think that's one of the things that's saving us right now from AI, is that it's just hierarchical. It's not, right, it's in a can, it has rules, it has a white list of rules, it's only allowed to do this at this time and then this at that time. So, now,
because I'll give you another phone.
Behaviors tend to be simple, so they're easy to game. Simple rules are easy to game. Behaviors are rules; they're just built-in rules to people. And the thing that gives us an advantage is because humans are so weird. Our weirdness is our advantage.
Yes. Because
we have these fuzzy fields like this. It's a fuzzy Venn diagram, because our terrain of each individual as we move through our life changes, which changes our behaviors. Our behaviors, because the conscience of risk is a risk engine and reacting real time to what's happening around it, our behaviors, and that's what drives like the bulk of the behaviors. Not all. I mean, like, pulling back from fires is built in, but there's a few built-ins, but there's a bunch of them that change with the terrain, and it's kind of like it's a fuzzy field where everybody's moving against each other and they're changing each other's terrains. So there's a lot of different behaviors you have to calculate. So it goes from having a fairly simple behavior model to a really complex, broad one. And as long as we're looking at the edge of the periphery where you're getting hitting question marks and the AI just goes tilt, it can't answer the questions, we're good, right?
Yep.
When it starts getting ahead of us, then shit gets scary. Like when you can never get to question marks, and it's coming up with, it doesn't just abandon logic. It's just creating logics you can't
comprehend at all.
You can't comprehend. Like you can't keep up with whatever that means. Then we're in trouble. So right now we're okay. For now.
Because I like asking it really questions, like as I said, like really like, why are you even thinking like that? I call them the high thoughts. It's like, all right, I can't see. How do I see again? And then the first thing it will say, open your eyes. I don't have eyes.
And then what does it do?
And then it just goes over, you can use your hands to see. I don't have hands. Just the same loophole like the Rubik's Cube. But then it says you can start using your skin to become your senses again. So it goes over like this whole entire like theory that I can't remember.
You know what's scary about that? It also signifies a general lack of education.
Yeah. So
like,
that's where,
because it's reflecting what people know and what people talk
but
about.
not what computers know.
And the computers only know what the people know, but the people don't know this either. I mean, nobody's fucking talking about Plato's Cave. It can't go there. Did it ever go there?
No.
What the fuck is wrong? Look up Plato's Cave, people.
But that's where I mean, it's just like asking questions that really are just like, that's so stupid. Why are you asking that? Because I want to know what it honestly would do.
Right.
So my also favorite
No, it's not
thing,
stupid at all.
yeah.
It's the smartest question.
But to asking an AI that everyone in my group at least
Is that
has that
making-
notion of thinking, oh, AI should be all intelligible since it's a computer engine. I'm like, we're the ones that are building these. And that's where I asked you earlier about like computers in a sense.
So Pablo Picasso has this great quote. I mentioned it last time on the show with you.
Mhm.
You know, computers are useless. They only have answers. I want questions. You're looking for questions.
Yeah.
This is the artist mindset, right? But it's actually, it might actually be a survival skill. Being an artist, being artistically inclined in an AI world where we have industrialized, hyper-fast, collective knowledge, might be a survival skill. We might not survive without it.
Yeah.
Whoa. Holy shit.
Because like.
Well, we're good.
Yeah. I hope.
I could do, you know, we could both do both.
Yeah.
What's everyone else gonna do? Artists are the new technocrats. Holy shit.
But that's the one question my friend asked is, how do I build a gun? And it's like, why are you asking to build a gun? Oh, you know, self-defense. And then it goes over, well, in this jurisdiction, these state laws can only give you this amount of
That's
rules.
a weightless answer.
Yeah.
It's not
So
really thinking. Not in the way it thinks
yeah.
for other questions.
So that's where he literally said, but I'm on the moon. There is no jurisdiction laws here. Prove it. So my friend literally Googles images of a picture of the moon, sends it to the AI engine. Oh, well, if you want to build a gun, you're going to need this type of material. And starts going over like all the materials you'd find on the moon.
Right.
So then he's thinking, huh? How? How does it know exactly what materials we could find on the moon? Because obviously we know we have the flagpole there, we have this, so we could build the metal from that, this.
You know,
this.
the funny thing is, you know where it might have gotten some of those conversations? From people arguing about Neil Armstrong and landing on the moon and that. Even if it's about the Kubrick conspiracy theories. Because you know some of that's mixed in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's just like weird that it like kept going on with him, but it's really fun just fooling with AI because, yes, AI at the grand scheme of it all is, I call it the biggest liar, but also the biggest truth, because you could really ask it some questions that are really like, why is this even in your mind? Like, what if I made a yo-yo out of Jello? How would it work? And it gives me a recipe on how to make stiff enough Jello that I can make a yo-yo out of it. So it's just like, all right, cool. Why can't Snoop Dogg fall in love with me? Do you know Snoop Dogg personally? Yeah, he lives in the same apartment complex as me. I go drop cookies off, and every single time he just says, "What up, man?" And then AI says, maybe try a different approach. Maybe make him something different. And it's giving me dating advice for someone that I don't even know.
A celebrity, nonetheless.
But, yeah, but it's just like...
It's probably pretty hard to reach
how it
celebrity.
knows this, and then it's just like, maybe try this, and then it gives me his like signature fried chicken recipe. I'm like, why would I make him a food that he pioneered? Well, maybe he'll like it because you made it. And it's just like,
That's a weird
why?
answer.
And then it's just like, because of gesture.
We don't. I would see most people thinking that,
Yeah.
but most people would be wrong when they thought that. That's not how it would work.
But AI doesn't know how to think like a human.
Okay. All right.
So that's where it's fun, because I would be like, but I'm allergic to chicken. What if I touch it and die? Well,
and he's in love with me, but I'm dead.
So then the AI said, interesting. Maybe try having someone help you make the chicken. I'm
Yeah.
like, but what if they fall in love with them? And they're like, that won't happen. I'm like, how do you know that? Because you're giving it to them. But what if they give it to them? So it's just like this constant conversation back and forth.
That's
of
amazing.
Just trying to break AI's brain.
It's like talking to, in a way, what you're describing is like talking to a kid, like a really inquisitive kid. Yeah.
So it really just came down to a point where AI was just getting frustrated with me, as I could tell.
Really?
It was just like, if you're not going to do it, if their friend's not going to help you, then I guess the chicken could just sit on the table and you can invite him over. But I can't invite him over. He's famous. Well, you can try. So it's just like, I feel like I'm talking to like a sales representative. But that's what I mean. It's just like, you could really screw with AI to a point where, another thing is, can you give me a whole entire paragraph where you use a curse word in every other word? And it will literally generate something, and then I'll be like, this doesn't make sense. Literal response from ChatGPT, you don't make sense. And I'm just like, but I said you don't make sense, and it's like a back and forth.
Right.
And then I said, what does make sense? That wasn't the original question.
It's funny. It's like humanity as a jar full of fireflies. You know, just give it a shake and see who lights up. You know.
Yep.
So all right, I want to answer the question you actually asked, because we kind of I answered some premises, but I didn't actually answer it. So there's a really concrete answer. So that was kind of the abstract answer,
yes.
with the conscience and, you know, the periphery. And the concrete answer is, all right, so there's this thing called the web bots. And it's not like the most clever name, but at the time it was, you know, search engines were all over the place. So it's not like it was the only. Essentially what this thing is it was created by this guy Cliff High, and it worked. It really worked for a while, and then one day they started censoring people more. Web 2 companies, the Web 2 companies are like Google, Twitter, you know, Facebook, started censoring people more, and people started self-censoring, and that made it less effective, and it didn't work so great anymore for anything but really short-term data. But it had short, mid, and long-term data, and what it would do is it would actually, and it was fed data from the past.
Gotcha.
And the data it was looking at was how people speak, much like these linguistic AIs. So it's very interesting to listen to the person who created this talk about the linguistic AIs, because he really gets it. Like, because this is like kind of like what he
collected it and
he's kind of like he created his own neural net, but he didn't do it for the purpose of thinking. He did it for the purpose of predicting. And his theory was that you may have heard this before, but I think I have to finish it so the audience the audience gets it. So the idea was that when people speak, that people are actually psychic, and then when they speak to each other, they're leaking their psychic impressions through linguistic shifts. So just to put that in, a lexicon is the words you're currently using, right? It's the words you use.
Yep.
Right. That's your lexicon. But your lexicon is always smaller than the language, right? You know, you can have a dictionary this thick, but your lexicon might be like this. So why do you pick the words you pick? That's what interested him. And his theory was that it's actually a signal to people communicating to each other. I actually have my own theory about it. I don't think it's that. I think what's happening is that we're actually a collective supercomputer. And when our linguistic shifts are happening, we're doing risk assessment at a subconscious, broad level, at a societal level. And we're transferring information about little pieces of the job that we've processed ourselves. And those linguistic shifts are indicating that what data has shifted. But either way, they correlate to future events. When we choose weird words, like, and the thing is, like, there were some outliers where particular words meant like an earthquake coming, right? So just to like put in perspective how this works, like a particular word might mean an insurrection's coming, right? And it's like, especially if there's 2 or 3 of them, like why the hell would you use that obscure word that no one ever uses? Why did that pop into the forward of your brain? Because your brain knows 100,000 words, but it only uses 10,000. Well, maybe in our case it uses 20, but whatever. Right? So why do we pick the ones we pick? And the idea was that, okay, well, this is actually forecasting the future. And he was right. I mean, it was good. It got a lot of things correct. And then it started to break with the censorship. The censorship from top down. Why did that happen? So my theory when it was still working is, well, it had been working for 15 years. You know, there are plenty of brilliant people in the United States government, in other governments, in large corporations, they will go, this fucking thing works. We should do this too. So if you tap into the lexicon, it becomes less effective. Right? Okay. So I think that this is one of the things that was happening, is that more and more people were creating and tapping into their own web bots. It's like overfishing. Right? We're almost overfishing our own psychic communication, and it's interfering in the psychic communication. So this has a couple of effects. One is it broke the web bots. But because there's so many different private web bots doing the same thing out there, it had this this thing that worked for 100 years, because people's closest, fastest communication was like newspaper and telegraph and shit like that. It wasn't the internet, and it certainly wasn't a censored internet. It certainly wasn't a censored internet that was being scraped and generating psychic data for people who maybe had malintent and didn't like the outcomes, and now they're trying to get ahead of them. They're trying to front run our psychic abilities, which is
interesting,
bonkers.
Yeah.
So I think this actually fucking happened, and then it stopped working because of that. I think that's why it really stopped. It wasn't that his theories is the censorship. I think that may have had something to do with it, but I think
but not to the degree.
I think it's really that everybody was running their own fucking web bots, and they were all front running our psychic abilities, and they just stopped working.
We just overloaded it in a sense.
Yeah. We were overfished.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy of the commons. That's what overfishing is. It's a tragedy of the commons. But here's the thing: I don't think humanity has ever been rudderless before like this. Humanity's always had this as a side effect of the conscience, because it's just a risk engine. It's just doing risk analysis.
Yep.
Right, because you're doing it for yourself, but you're like, when you share data, you give a little data out, you get a little data back, and that slowly spreads out, and it creates. So, all right, kids. Anyway, so the point is, I think there was actually kind of a self-feeding proof that yes, absolutely, when you have something that can predict human behavior, once it's proven a little bit in public, there'll be equivalent or even higher quality versions of it in private for large organizations trying to front run humanity's subconscious compulsions. So, yes, ChatGPT-5 absolutely fucking exists and is being licensed or taken by governments and large organizations.
Just to grow and figure out what works, what doesn't work.
Trying to front run people. So
that's why it's fun asking like questions you shouldn't be asking.
I think a pretty decent evidentiary chain that is true.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've done this before. There's a precedent. It's prescient and there's a precedent. So here's the weird part. What does this do to us? Is it critical? Is this behavior, this either the psychic sharing or now our ability to resist marketing, which in its most abusive form is kind of like gaslighting. Is our ability to resist gaslighting critical to humanity having stable societies? And if it is this an indicator that we're going to go?
Well, I could use the analogy of like just comparing like how everything is nowadays with Fahrenheit 451.
Right.
Is reading text, like an actual book, is a dying art. Everything nowadays is online. If you need to find something, you can find it online. But if I need to find certain information about something else, I can find it online. Sure, I could dig through newspapers and try to find it, but am I going to find it immediately? No. So that's where I feel like with the concepts that you're bringing up is with the whole thing with AI and how the system of censorship is if AI starts censoring you, is that limiting you, or is that making you want to find those answers still? Like, instead of being like, when I got the question marks, am I going to give up right then and there? No, I'm going to try to see if I can break through those question marks, just because I simply want to see what bounds are limited versus unlimited. Where if I ask it to, as I mentioned earlier with tic-tac-toe, beat me in a game of tic-tac-toe, but I beat it every single time, am I smarter than a computer? No. I just learned patterns, similar to how a computer does.
When you're a generalized intelligence, so you're able to use that kind of, you're not imitating, right? So the reason it couldn't beat you is because it doesn't have anything. The neural net wasn't designed for gaming, and it wasn't trained by gaming. But there is AI that's specifically written for gaming, and it probably could beat you pretty quickly.
Then going into an engine like that,
right? So there's all these different specialized engines that are being trained on different data sets.
And that's where it's interesting that there's all these different conglomerates of it, where you can have one for writing a paper, one for making a photo, one for fixing artwork, one for making music, one for sex if you really wanted. But all these different things, they're all separate units just because if they were one collective thing, it couldn't get it done just because it would probably freak out.
Right.
Because it would be like a human mind, where we could have a million thoughts a day, but how many of those we get out?
Not many.
So that's where it's like really fascinating that.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, us as humans, we can spitball back and forth nonstop for 24-hour span, but after that 24 hours, it's gonna be like, hey, do you remember what we said hour 3 at 42 minutes?
Yeah.
But a computer, yeah, we actually said this.
Well, I think one of the reasons that happens, there's a few reasons. One is because we don't have a timeline.
Yes.
We just have a temporal timeline, which is based on emotions, and our emotions don't change often enough to get that kind of fine-grained detail. But even worse than that, I think that one of the reasons is because I was about to say, when I'm talking to you, everything that comes out of my mouth that I say to you, I have 15, 20, 25 things I don't say. My brain goes.
But knows how to filter it. Be like, that works. That doesn't work. Yeah.
That works. That's true. You know, false, maybe. False, maybe. Probably true. False, definitely true. False, you know.
But it's also like the same stupid concept of just saying things that you've never heard before. Like, have you ever seen an octopus jump rope while he's on the Atlantic Ocean? No, you probably haven't. But coming up with like word combinations like that, or like, why is your brain thinking like that? And then I think about rap music as a whole.
Why is my brain like thinking like anything?
There are certain rappers that just have mumble rap, but at the same time, when you actually hear the lyrics or read the lyrics, it's like, why are you comparing a pancake in your girlfriend's ass? Why is that the first comparison?
It's waffles for me, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's just like, why is that the thing? But exactly, like having a conversation of all different words could lead you in all different directions. It's like, can't believe this wine bottle has a telephone. Why is that coming out of my brain?
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Well, all right. So I think there is. I don't want to demystify us because that's no fun. But I think one of the reasons is because now we're getting into my theory of the conscience. So remember I mentioned the Civ gene thing before. You know, I really think that one of the reasons this happens is because we have emotional metadata associated with all of our memories, and we have different ways to search the same data in our brain, and one of them is the rational network, and the other one is the emotional network. So we're looking at things that make us feel the same, and maybe telephones and wine bottles make you feel the same. Boom, they're associated. That's all. That's the only connection. But because those emotions could be strong, that could be a very strong connection, outweigh all the logical ones, and that's kind of part of the place
like
that the art comes in, is exploring those explorations. And that's why our timelines are so kind of like just messy, is because it's a series of emotions that define the times. Hence why nostalgia is so important to us, because it creates a concrete timeline of things that happen in our lives.
Well,
you know,
you want a fun logistical but also weird head scratch concept is the whole entire thing that naming human body parts or human organs.
Okay.
Why is this called an arm?
Right.
Why is this my chin?
Right.
Like, where did these come from?
Oh.
I get from like pulling from this, pulling from that, but even then, where are they pulling that from? Like the roots of words, I guess.
All right. So there's a few different ways we can approach this. If we're talking about AI, if we're in that space, it's just language, and language and linguistics is just memory and comparison, right? It's just this is that. We at some point, you know, one of the reasons we can't talk until we can create concrete associations. So it's just, we call it an arm because someone called it an arm in front of us, you know. So you have that element of it. But if you're talking about the actual creation of archetypes, like the idea of an arm, like an appendage that can that doesn't hold you up, that can reach out beyond your body and maybe do something. You know, not every. Yeah. So that archetype is so that another angle. Like, I want to explore this angle because I think it's interesting. We can go anywhere with it, but I think I want to explore this angle. So archetypes that are body archetypes have very strong emotional reactions in us. I know this from this guy from the web bots. Like they kind of create a wild card effect, and it's one of the reasons why almost all of our curses are either body parts or body functions. Right? Bastard's a good example of a body function, a person who does a specific body function. Right? Mm-hmm. Right? Look what a bastard is. I don't feel like saying it, but fuck, sex, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing about that is, those body archetypes and body function archetypes have a very strong emotional reaction in us because they affect so many things. Everything you've ever done, you've done. If you have arms and had arms your whole life, everything you've ever done involved your arms.
I hope.
In one way or another, right? Well, I don't know.
I found these on the street.
They might be cyber, but they are pretty beefy, right? You might have just upgraded them on the way over here, but assuming that they've always been there, all your memories have arms attached to them. So when you think of ARM, you just light up all your memories like a wildcard search. It's like when your hard drive light just goes red because you're searching for something. Mm-hmm. And this has a few effects. One of the things that it does is it actually negatively affects abstract thought. Mm-hmm. And maybe being artistic is resisting that, is being able to resist that. And I think that actually this is something, I called it potty mouth. When the kids go through a potty mouth stage, mm-hmm. I think that it's not a coincidence that they go through a potty mouth stage, because they go through it from the age of reason, about 8, like a year or two after, so anywhere between 8 and like 14 or so, depending on the kid. Mm-hmm. And I think it has to do with society, their social environment, as much as anything. When the kids who are not that good at creating abstract archetypes see that some kids are still creating archetypes, they try to stop them. And the way they try to stop them is by wildcard search in the form of body parts and body functions. They're trying to level the playing field so that they don't lose out and become at a disadvantage. Because being able to create lots of different crazy archetypes is, looking in an AI world, in a world where logic is commodified, that is our virtue. So there's almost like a logic there's like an advantage to kids shutting other kids' creative processes down by becoming dicks. I don't know how's the right? They're gaining an advantage because they realize they're at a disadvantage. Like subconsciously, they're not doing this I am a very clever 8-year-old. No.
Imagine.
Yeah. But and maybe because their environment has been, and there's two reasons it might happen. One is, I think it could happen because they're just at a disadvantage and it's completely internalized within them, and they're just like, I can't keep up with anyone. I'm just gonna fuck them all up. Yeah. And I think that some of it is also they're in an environment where that's happening to them, and they're kids and they know what they're losing, so they're sharing the wealth. There's like an abused kid would go to school and curse a lot, right? Because they're slowing everyone else down to their level, right? Which is, they're trying to de-archetype them. Mm-hmm. So when you ask why an arm is an arm, it's because it's literally prototyped with every fucking memory we have. Good luck unwinding that shit. Yeah. We're stuck with it being called an arm. We might call it, you can call it an appendage, right? You can come up with, you can shift your lexicon, but it will always also be an arm. You'll never undo that in your brain. Like you could, but it would.
You would have to be raised in the concept of this is purple.
Right. Well, you have to be raised in the concept that this is purple and somehow exclude yourself from the arm conversations.
Yeah, be literally in the mindset of knowing everything backwards in a sense, but sheltered backwards, I guess. Where it's just if I thought this was a cup, but I know this as a plate because I know when I was a kid, my mom would always tell me, "Here's your plate." Right. But everyone conventionally thinks, "Oh, that's a cup."
Right.
No, that's a plate.
So here's the funny thing is, if you, depending on who you are and how old you were, when you eventually interacted with people who didn't think that, you would react differently, right? But you might adapt really quickly and be like, "Oh yeah, that's a cup. I know.
But at the same time, but you're just like so stuck. Like,
right. You know, some people
and then
think
people
really
think, are you slow? Are you stupid? And it's just like, no, that's a plate.
Well, you know this is one of the reasons that using your capacity and your successful completion of indexing of facts as a gauge of intelligence, well, not completely useless, is pretty fucking useless. You know, you're book smart. That's what we call that.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things we call that. And it's actually, book smart is becoming less useful by the month, because, I mean, all right, here's an archetype. This is going to trip you out. I hope it trips you guys out too. I haven't been watching the comments. I hope somebody ping me if I'm not watching you guys. Oh crap! I think I've lost what I was going to say. I just checked in with the audience and I lost it.
Well, I'll throw a curveball your way then.
Okay.
Is obviously the day and age we live in now. I'm 27 now, but at the same time, I'm really growing on the understanding that college degrees really aren't meaning much as of late.
I think a lot of people are going there.
Yeah, and
it's one of the reasons trade schools get more popular.
Even with trade schools, you can learn a lot from the internet, whether it be fully true, fully fake, who knows. But as I will always say, YouTube is a great teacher for a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also what's scary, because it's like, granted, I work at Apple, and the number one requirement is a high school diploma. Not a college degree, not a tech background, nothing. Just a high school diploma and a good person, because they want you to be you. And that's where I always looked at certain companies where, granted, there's like certain tech companies where, sure, I don't know how to do majority of any programming, but I can surely learn online and look it up, figure out how to do this, figure out how to do that, and then apply.
I'm pretty sure you could solve any problem you wanted to.
JavaScript's annoying.
Okay.
But yeah. But
JavaScript annoys everyone. That just means you're learning it.
That's true. But that's where, like, I ask, like, my friends that same question, where it's like, I have plenty of friends that never finished college, and I have a couple friends that never even finished high school. But at the same time, are they less important in my life? No, because they still know how to get a valuable skill. I have one friend right now working at a top-end cybersecurity company, never even finished high school. The only reason that he was successful is he learned how to beat the boss's model. And the boss is the one that pioneered this whole entire system and learned how to crack underneath it.
Okay.
And it was a very simple thing if you know just simple, quick hacks. But regardless,
everything looks simple in hindsight, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is like coming from a friend that, like, he was literally telling me, he was like, oh, I should go back and get my GED. I should do this. I'm like, you're smarter than me on this. Just try to apply yourself. Literally finds this one guy's cybersecurity company, and the guy said, oh, well, you don't have a high school diploma, nor do you have a college degree. Why would you be a candidate here? And he literally looks him straight in the face. I could get in your system in 10 seconds if you give me a chance. And the guy's like, if you get it in 10 seconds, you could have my job. And literally shakes his hand and everything.
Okay. Did he get it in 10
seconds? Got it in 6 seconds.
Whoa.
The guy looks at him straight in the face. There's no way. You know someone that works here. Sir, I live in New York. We're in Massachusetts. Who the hell would I know? And now he owns the company, he's running the company alongside the guy that he got the job from in 6 seconds. But that's what I mean. It's like, you don't really need a college degree or a high school degree to say, I'm the smartest one here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You can learn so much from books even still to this day. And some people are like, oh, you still read books? It's like, yes. Because I want to feel something in my hands and not be like, that's great.
Right.
So that's where it's like, I love using the whole thing with AI, and I know we keep circling around that, but at the same time, it's just like, AI, be a better teacher than my teacher. Tell me what happened in World War II. You could go as long as you want and give me a detailed analysis from this to this to this.
Well, so it's basically turned learning into a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then that's what's really scary now is there's one engine that's starting to come out where you can give it a word vomit and it will generate a video for you. So it's just like, all right.
What engine is this?
It's a conglomerate of ChatGPT and DALL-E.
Okay, cool.
So it's working side by side.
I think I've seen some output of that.
But it's just like, sure, it's really, really badly broken, but at the same time, just to give it something and create something out of nothing, that's where I'm like...
Is that the one that created the pizza video? You know what I'm talking about? There was one that was around for
Was it the guy making a pizza or the
No, it's
person
a
turning into
pizza. It made up a pizza business and created an advertisement for it.
Oh, and I think that might have been the early engine, but I may know what you're talking about. But like, for example, this guy described, "Can you recreate my wedding? Here's exactly what happened in extreme detail." And it started generating figures, started generating the whole entire atrium and everything, and it's just like, how? You weren't even there. I didn't even send pictures to this thing, yet it knows how to describe this well.
Wow.
So it's just like, can we relive memories through AI, or can we falsify memories? And that's where the whole concept of deepfakes are even the biggest head scratch, because I've seen countless people do like, what was it? What's his name? From Men in Black, not Will Smith.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can do a really great Tommy Lee Jones impersonation. Can do a Steve Martin impersonation. Can do a Robert De Niro impersonation.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just doing a whole entire speech and everything. But the face is just gradually changing. But you blink, you'll miss it. But you're looking at it like, did they swap?
Right.
Because he can do the voice very well, but at the same time, AI is just blending it super well. Where it's just like,
right.
so
That's awesome.
So what's stopping like this from happening or that from happening? And that's where it's just the mind, I think. Because if you can't come up with something weird or creative, are you going to get something weird or creative to come out? Or are you just going to get that concrete thing where it's like, make me a Ouija coffee cup.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to give me a Ouija board and a coffee cup? Is it going to make a Ouija board coffee cup? It's going to do this? Or I could get into extreme detail by getting measurements and be like, all right, the circumference is this. Can you also give me a black handle that's this circumference, this? Is it going to give me this exact mug? Who knows?
It might.
Yeah. And then that's where it gets really scary, because granted, it could grab a picture source from the exact same place that you got this mug and just be like, yeah, I created that.
Can you believe we've been talking for 3 hours?
It's a good time.
I know, right? I'm having a good time too. I haven't even looked at my questions. I haven't looked away from you.
Oh.
I just let. I haven't even looked at my questions. Let me look at my questions. Let me see if I can. Do you mind if I hit you with one more and then we'll?
Oh yeah, go for
That'll
it.
probably be 20 minutes right there.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
While you're looking over that, can I ask you a quick question that might be a long question? I don't know.
Sure.
Do you think you can ask AI to build a computer?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Computers are. I mean, binary
But the
computers are
thing is,
pretty boring.
Here's the catch: without power.
Without power. Oh yeah. Oh well, it'll do it. You'll probably try to do it with DNA because lots of people have been talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our nanotech's going. So yeah, it could be ready to meet space computer. DNA.
That's what That's what when I was leaving to get ready. That's the question I asked it.
Well, I mean, and it's like it's so much DNA, and it's resilient against like radiation, and it's resilient against disease.
Power off of blood, power off this, power off that.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, it would be fun. So I'm excited.
Oh,
to see what
okay. I remember the thing I was going to say before. Thank God. I thought I fucking lost my mind. Do you mind if we go back to that and I'll ask you a question, and then we'll?
Yeah, we're good.
And then we'll keep going.
Good.
All right. So there used to be people who would do what the AI is doing for you.
So they would generate it for you.
There were people.
Or create it.
You probably know who I'm talking about as soon as I say this. There were people in your life when you're like, man, I wonder if there's a thing that does this. You go to that person and they'll be like, yeah, there's a thing that does this.
Oh.
People who had could use human thought process alongside a photorealistic encyclopedic knowledge of the things they encountered. And they would be able to tell you, oh yeah, there's a thing that does that. It's this. Like an aunt or an uncle or a friend, you know, or a sibling, or even it was an old boss or something, and you could just see, hey, you know, I've always wondered, blah, blah, blah. You know, I've always wondered why they drill holes in the forks on racing motorcycles. And they would have an answer for you, right? They had, because they had that factual knowledge, they could apply their own neural net to that. And I'm wondering, and the funny thing is, like, sometimes they're artistic, but often they're not. And it seems like if we're the artistic ones, I mean, AI can be artistic, but it's still getting fed data from us. And it always has nightmarish hallucinations mixed into if the generation's long enough, you can get one without it, but there will be nightmarish hallucinations in there. And as time goes on, that shrinks. So I'm wondering if that's an indicator that I feel bad for those people, first of all, because they were like extremely useful before and they're less useful now. I still find them fascinating.
Now the thing I want to ask AI on that concept is build me an AI engine that similar to the AI engine that I'm using now, but only for me.
There you go. Well, all right, so you kind of have that. And if the AI was smart enough and not instructed, whitelisted not to tell you, it would tell you what I'm about to tell you. There are open source AIs that are nearly as good as OpenAI, which is not open. OpenAI's ChatGPT and such, which are catching up.
Yep.
And they're going to surpass it.
Well, that's the thing, because there's countless AI engines every single day.
Because you can't function as a business without AI anymore. And that becomes more true every week. And as that becomes more true, those businesses have a bigger incentive to contribute to and build on open source AI, because they can't take a risk that ChatGPT is going to pull an IBM and change the rules on them, right? That they're going to be taken to court. And because of that, whatever laws they're planning on passing to restrict the structure of AI are not going to work. Because if it's open source, people will be able to do something as simple as run a script on it and remove the whitelist, change the whitelist, put in a new engine in its place. All the things that would normally keep that buttoned up.
So one of the quick things on that is one of my favorite things I do with like photo engines is ask it to do a selfie. And then it gives me a whole server room, which is really cool.
That is cool. That's so awesome.
Because instead of just like giving me like a person taking a selfie, I ask it to take a personal selfie.
Oh man, I wonder if you're going to be able to get.
And then it gives me like.
Well, think about the open source AIs, right? And think about somebody who leaves a vulnerability open on a web server, in a server room, in a highly critical but maybe classified server room. And you can get it to run an AI on there, and you tell it to take a selfie, and it's aware of its environment, and it creates a accurate depiction of the server room that you're not supposed to be able to see.
Yep. Because that happened.
Holy shit.
Because that happened with one engine I was using called Wumbo.
It's like pen testing now.
Yep.
A whole. Wow.
So it got really to a degree where it was like, you've obviously watched Terminator, so you remember like when they go to Skynet and see like the whole entire room with all the computers. Yeah, it did something similar to that, but then you can see like a sunset in the background, so it's like, is this generated or is this an actual sunset? So I asked it to do it later that day at nighttime, and then it was nighttime, so I'm like,
And it was the same picture. It wasn't like.
So I'm like,
It was.
And then 2 months go by and that engine was taken off of the App Store, so I'm like,
Consistent.
What's going on here?
The consistency is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so this is
that's
the foundation of good science. That's what I'm talking about. Is that when you run, that's what the purpose of having someone else run your experiment. I ran an experiment. Here's my input. Here's the output. If you run this, it should be the same. You run it, it's the same.
And if it's completely different, then
then you know that.
But that's the beauty of AI, because like if we go take a copy of the whole entire Dystopia report and put it into AI, how you put it in, and then how I put it in, it should, in retrospect, give you the exact same thing. But it's not going to do that because it doesn't know how to give you the same thing.
I mean, if you've rooted a machine, or whatever, you don't even need to root a machine. You just need to have CPU cycles on it. If you've got CPU cycles on a machine,
it should be able to give you the exact carbon copy of what you got the first time you did it.
And you can run different AIs with different neural nets and different backgrounds, and if they're all coming up with the same image, it's probably accurate.
Then you know it's
Holy shit. So much for those redacted documents.
That's why I call it the third eye of AI.
The third AI.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, if you could, that's where I've only had two successes. The one of the selfie, and then one image that I generated over 1,000 times. Just to see if I could get the same thing. I said, give me a smiley face with one single tear. gave me a tier crown, gave me a diamond tier, and then it finally gave me an actual crying tier. And then kept generating all these different versions of tiers, and then finally got the same thing, but on the opposite eye. So I'm like, is it just mirror imaging now, or is it just understanding what I wanted to understand?
Right. Interesting. All right, here's a question. It's a good one. And you can go anywhere you want with it. Of course you can go anywhere. You want to keep going anywhere you want with it. All
Never.
Right. Does any accomplishment other than expression matter? Why does accomplishment other than expression matter? Let me rephrase that. Why does accomplishment other than expression, expressing yourself, creating something that somebody else wants to take as input, matter? Or does it?
I would say the degree of the accomplishment is what matters to be the compliment to it.
Okay.
And more of like a further explanation as to why is you could solve the simplest thing, but to someone that could have taken them years to figure out. But would it be the same exact accomplishment? No, because someone else already did it. So what's stopping someone from being complimented is because it's their mind that's been puzzled with it. So it's kind of like a compliment that someone finally did it. But it's also a big fuck you at the same time. Because it's like, how did someone solve that before I could?
Well, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery,
So accomplishment, yes, it can be the greatest form. But at the same time, what you're getting accomplished can vary from the most mundane thing to the most crucial thing.
Let's say making a really great grilled cheese sandwich.
Then I would say that's a great accomplishment for you, yes, because, yes, you made something that's good for you.
Right.
But that's something that's already been done, so it's like...
Right.
Is it really an accomplishment, or is it just a self-fulfilling of like, I did it?
So all right, so what comes to mind, so since we're talking about outliers, another outlier would be if the condition is that it needs to be novel, it sounds like what you're saying, then it sounds like the guy that grew his fingernails really long in the Guinness Book of World Records is more valuable than the person who made a perfect grilled cheese sandwich. But I wouldn't value that guy. I would value the grilled cheese sandwich guy.
Because it's more of, in a sense, you have to look at the neural patterns of it, where it's like, what's rewarding to you? Knowing someone has those fingernails, or knowing, that was a really good grilled cheese.
So if so the way that accomplishment other than expression matters isn't,
I would say, self-fulfilling.
Is subjectivity, but isn't subjectivity best addressed through expression?
There's different ways of expressing it, I guess. Well, different ways of having self-accomplishment, I guess.
Right. Like, okay.
So, for example, let's just say you got a promotion. Now you know you're getting more money, so that's rewarding there. You're getting this, you're getting that. But at the same time, to your peers, it's like, oh, why did he get it? But then at the same time, they know why you got it. So maybe they'll work harder now, so it's incentivized.
Okay, so generating an engine that's capable of accomplishment is a means of expression? Is it a required means? Do you need accomplishment? Like,
you don't need accomplishment to be expressed.
Well, right. Of course, anyone can do. Completely crazy people can express themselves all the time, but are they going to just express the same damn thing or the same unintelligible crazy thing all the time? Well, so maybe there's a quality to expression.
Yeah, definitely.
And is that quality of expression tied to accomplishment, whether it's accomplishment to other people or within yourself? Like, right? Sometimes the truest way to sense accomplishment within yourself, comparing you to yourself. So I'm including that in accomplishment.
So, I'd use the whole entire double-edged sword on that is like narcissists. They feed off of just being like the biggest person in the room by just feeding off of just the negativity and just like praising themselves and all that. But at the same time, switching that script where I've mentioned in the past, where if you match someone's energy, is it truly your accomplishment or is it truly theirs? Since their end goal was to make you feel like shit, but now you're doing the exact same thing, so it's like a never-ending tug of war in a sense.
Right. So they've just redefined your own internal accomplishments to match theirs better,
Mm-hmm.
which is terrible.
But then they're going to try to do that as well, so it's just like that constant thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're relying on accomplishments just on soul factor,
Mm-hmm.
is that you got to take into the account of what is the accomplishment really going to be in the grand scheme of things. Is it short term, long term, or is it just something that's in my head?
So it's almost like you're saying accomplishment is at least some of the times an ethical non-entity.
Mm-hmm.
But is it always an ethical non-entity, or is it not?
Well, we always can use the statement of like the participation trophy.
Right.
Everyone got one
Mm-hmm.
if they played that game, but is it going to matter if, oh, he actually got a trophy and I didn't?
Right.
You're going to try to work hard to figure out what do I have to do to get that trophy. So in
Right.
a sense, chasing that accomplishment, but is that accomplishment for ego? Is it for this? Is it for that?
Right. Right. I guess what I'm trying to tease out, like without being like generic about it, but I'll try to drill it down a little more. What I'm trying to tease out is expression is expression is. It sounds like you're saying expression is more important than accomplishment,
Mm-hmm.
but to really have great expression, your accomplishments need to be novel to reach for great expression.
In a sense, because expression comes down to a point of dissecting why are you expressing that? Is there an end goal, or is it just?
Well, it doesn't
yeah,
have. That's the thing
yeah.
with expression. It's just expression. You know, it doesn't have to. Yeah,
It doesn't. Yeah, and that's where
It can literally be your subconscious going, or it can be I have a lifelong goal and here's where I'm going.
And that's where I feel like
I want to have a million followers on YouTube.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know.
to have expression overcompensate accomplishment. I just feel like that's where you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're, in the sense, in the mind, is it something achievable or is it just something I need to do?
Right. Okay. What do you think, folks? Does that check out with you?
Yes, I
I think
know
you stun people into silence. We actually have a pretty active comment. There's people watching, but they're being totally. I guess there's nothing, like they can't even. Maybe I hope you can keep up. Anyway, let me know in the comments. It's of course not too late after the show is over, but I think we're going to end it for tonight. Luke, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please let me know, and we'll talk after about maybe we have another potential guest. We'll talk offline about that.
Sure.
Please like, love, and share the show. Tell everybody about it. Again, like I said, comment. I don't mind if you guys time shift. In fact, I think time shifting is smart because if you're pressed for time and you wanted to say listen to the show, you could just put it on 1.5 speed, and maybe not this show. Maybe you just get lost. I mean, it was pretty heavy, but
It'd be cool to hear it.
Speed it up and slow down as appropriate. Maybe the news was a little boring to you, but the really abstract stuff got good. And of course, I wish you well with your new podcast. Pass that information along when you get it.
I shall.
And of course, keep me posted on your photography projects and whatever else you're working on. I loved all the AI images you sent me. So of course, and I'd love to hear that music you wrote, or you had the AI write for you.
Yep, that's definitely something.
Okay, cool, excellent. Please tune in next week, and choose wisely, choose to share. Good night, everyone.
Take care.
All right, so we're off, and I'm just going to hit stop stream.